p.m. Meetings held in Brookfield Town Hall, room 133. If you please all join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Start. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You're fine, don't worry. It's not a-
I'll have the members of the commission introduce themselves, starting from my left.
Dionisio Fontana, alternate.
Gwen Arment, a regular member.
Anthony Papucci, Vice Chairman.
Kurt Timmerman, Chairman.
Sean Turner, Secretary.
Matt Grimes, member.
Greg Petroscioni, alternate.
All right, thank you. We're going to, there's one item on the zoning enforcement.
Make a motion to move item 8A now.
Oh, now? Okay.
8A 20.
Yeah, all right,
I'll second it.
Sean got it.
Sean already did. Any discussion on moving 8A up to right now to
Is there a reason?
clear it? It's a fast one. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, thank you. Who's here for 2341 Graysbridge Road, Z dash? Okay, if you could approach the podium, state your name and address for the record.
Russ Postano, professional engineer with CCA LLC, 40 Old Milford Road.
Thank you. And would you like to explain why you're here tonight?
Yes, the applicant would like to change the emergency access from the plastic tubes in the zone to a gravel driveway. He's got approval from Wetlands Commission, he's got approval from the fire department. He just feels the plastic won't last long enough, it'll be too much of a maintenance headache. So I'd like to purchase a regular gravel
All right.
driveway.
I thought originally there were grass pavers, but
Well, grass pavers and got, I don't know the whole history, my partner did the work
Yeah.
here. Got changed somehow, I think, plastic cylinders with the stone in.
okay. Oh,
They tend to deteriorate, he's observed, and we'd rather put the gravel down.
yeah. All right. And so you just want to go to the gravel and yeah, I did
And
read
he's also gonna
that it
pave
was-
the first 30 feet because it's steep.
Yeah. And I read that the inland wetlands did approve it.
Right.
All right.
And then fire official approved it also.
I don't see any problem with it.
Yeah, it looks pretty straightforward. And they're the experts because it's right next to wetlands, right next to the
Right.
river, so they care the most about it. Any other commissioners have questions about changing from the grass pavers to the gravel? This is the extra space storage.
Yes.
This is their emergency drive on the east
Yes.
end of the property.
Did I read, and you want to pave?
No, not paved.
They're gonna put gravel.
Well, it says, and pave the first 90 linear feet.
Oh,
Right,
yeah.
the hill, the steeper part they're gonna pave so they don't have any erosion.
Oh, the steep part.
You're gonna pave because of the erosion.
No, because so no erosion will occur.
Okay, that makes more sense. Okay. So it's gravel and then road for the bicycles?
Town road, some paved area, then the gravel drive around to
Yeah.
the detention area.
And this is only used for emergency access?
Correct.
Yeah. This is not the way to get in. The way to get in is on the west side of the building.
Make a motion to approve application Z-24-49, that's up 48. That's 2341 Graysbridge Road, and that is a change to the emergency access road from grass
I'll
pavers
second
to
it.
gravel and pavement.
All right, thank you, Matt. Thank you, Tony. Any discussion on the motion? All right, it's pretty straightforward. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you. Unanimous. Let the record show is unanimous. All right. Thank you. One out. Send the next one in. So do you want to go through 3A? Back to the,
Yeah, you think we want us to act on a couple of things?
yeah. We had, just so you know, we had correspondence from the Prince of Peace Church, and this is also on the zoning enforcement report. So since we are time, we'll put those to the back and discuss it. Yeah, yeah. All right, the next one is review of the public minutes. Why don't we review that later too, so we can clear the room, you know, give everybody a chance. so we can move forward to the end as well. So the next one is 5A, 46 Sandy Lane, application Z-24-37, continued public hearing. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, if you could state your name and your address for the record.
Daniela Almeida, 64 North Lake Shore Drive. And the address we're gonna discuss is 46 Sandy Lane.
Yes.
And what I distribute is the questions that we had at the last meeting about if we're going to use over 100-yard process or under. We spoke with our contractor, they say definitely will be under because 90% of the land there is pretty much level already.
Yeah.
And about the time that we're going to keep people coming in and out for the business, we decided 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. during weekdays, Monday to Friday, and 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. on Saturdays and Sundays. About the privacy of the back, which is the closest to get to the condominium, we decided to leave 5 to 7 feet of the original landscape that is there, some trees, some out of the vegetation that is, and put some fence if we decide that in the winter especially where things kind of get bare, it kind of gets exposed. Then we're gonna put a 6x8 fence, the pressure treated pine fir fence. And we also gonna put some fence on top of the retaining wall that, for the privacy on the residential side.
Right. Did anybody in the commission get a chance to visit the site? I know I was there.
Yes, Kurt and Glenn and Sean.
Okay.
I was there with them, and hopefully kind of present the idea in a better way.
The one thing I noticed is there's a lot of trees that are actually on the Sandy Lane condominiums. There's very thick trees from the east end of the property to there.
Probably around 100 feet.
Yeah. And a lot of trunks, so even though they're mostly deciduous, it would be pretty difficult to see the buildings either way. I could barely see the buildings on the other, looking underneath. I don't know if that's how you saw it, Sean?
I had the same impression when I visited the site.
Yeah.
Pretty thick
What
foliage.
That's a good barrier on that side, but in the
Yeah.
back,
In the north? side,
yes,
yeah.
for 5 or 6 feet, that's not going to do anything for those people when the leaves are gone, is my concern.
Then we will install the fence.
Yeah. So maybe we can make a stipulation, you know, well, I don't wanna visit it again, because then we'd have to revisit it.
It's
We
hard
should
to,
just
it's hard
stipulate
to
a fence
visit
now.
it back there. I drove
Yeah.
it, but I couldn't.
Could we maybe stip the date that the fence has to be put in by?
Well, that's not the problem.
No, could you, s- well,
No, but we just don't know what it's gonna look like in the
Oh.
winter, on the north side. On the
Yeah.
east side, there's plenty of trees, it's so thick,
Yeah.
that I don't think
It's-
that's
it's,
gonna be necessary.
Who
But on the
owns
north
that? Does
side-
the city own that? Or no, the condominium owns
Yeah,
that. Right.
and
Condominium
the other thing is they're higher up, so
Condominium
a
association.
6-foot fence would look
Yeah.
higher and hide stuff if you're looking out from below. So I don't think they need to go all the way up to 8 feet.
But what kind of fence?
A solid fence, you know, it could be a
Yes.
stockade fence. I mean, that,
This is a commercial property, correct?
yes. And actually Sandy Lane is also in the same zone, a commercial zone.
Commercial zone.
Yeah, C1. So they're both in,
My concern is that with the type of vehicles that will be stationed there, it's going to look more industrial.
We're not going to, our plan is not to put big machines like excavators, nothing like that. Will be vans, will be employees' car that might gather there and get the crew somewhere else in a side job. It's more for small contractors than large companies. It's gonna be carpenters, painters, landscapers, that type of stuff that we're trying to serve.
and you know what? You know the complaints we get in from neighbors who have, other neighbors put their commercial vehicles on their property? This is the sort of place
Yes.
we need in town to
Yes.
handle this sort of smaller equipment.
Agreed.
Yeah.
My thought is, and we talked about this, is there a way to block it from the road, a nice fence across somehow?
As you see, that retaining wall that is on front, that's gonna be, nothing that is gonna be looking below. As you see, you come up and you go down. So it's already downhill where the spot's gonna be given. And you and I discussed about the entrance on if you're facing, would be on the left, definitely a fence will be put there because that's the only spot that people would kind of visualize it from the road. The other side would be really impossible for them to see what's down below.
But the slab that will remain, that you,
That retaining wall will stay so people cannot see the slab from the road.
Because the
Really?
slab they're talking
Yeah,
about is below.
because that is a huge, probably higher than 8 feet
oh, okay,
retaining wall that's
okay,
going to stay.
okay. I misunderstood.
Yeah, we're not leveling from there. Just, we can put a fence on the other side.
And to reaffirm a question that was asked last time, it's not on here, but you're not going to be allowing maintenance or repair of the commercial
Definitely
vehicles
we're
on the
not.
site?
Yeah.
No,
Yeah,
it's for
that's
storage
important
only.
too.
It is,
So we
it wasn't
can-
on here. but-
we
Right,
can have
but-
stipulations.
Right, we should definitely, yeah.
Will they be able to build, each contractor, let's say, will they be able to put a shed there?
Well, if they ask, we're thinking more of a container, if they need to contain their space with protection, you know, we're not thinking of sheds, but maybe a container.
Just so you know, contractors' yards are allowed in this zone,
Okay.
yeah. All right, not
Not
containers,
containers.
yeah.
We-
Not
I think-
containers.
I think as Tony
The
just
storage.
said, though, we need to stipulate about the no repairs and maintenance. right?
Yeah.
Right.
If you wanted me to add something.
If you
to
could,
have
yeah,
you guys
just
have it
initially.
on paper, we can add that.
We can add stipulations too
Okay.
because this is the part where we ask, get information. And then we close the public hearing and then we deliberate, which we can do, I think rather quickly because we have all the information.
That would help, yeah.
And then we can one more seat.
Miss Almeida, can you please spell your first name for the record?
DANIELE.
Thank you.
Is there any questions or clarification from the audience? Is there anybody who'd like to speak in favor of the application at 46 Sandy Lane? Is there anybody who'd like to speak in opposition? All right, any other questions from the commission on this particular application? No? All right.
Motion to close the public hearing.
Thank you, Matt. Do I have a second? Thank you, Tony. Any discussion on the motion? No, all in favor?
Aye.
All right. Should we just go right into deliberations? By the way, for the new members, only voting members are allowed to deliberate, because we're like a jury, just for your edification.
We just need a little mechanical help, I guess, on what the stipulations are that we
All right.
have.
So, in fact, some are written right here, so, hours, and I have no problem with those hours. They
Me
seem
either.
Fine,
Hours are fine.
yeah.
Be the same as like the trucks coming from Costco about that time.
I think a 6-foot stockade fence on the north side of the property. No repair of,
No repair or maintenance of
Yeah.
Yeah.
commercial vehicles on the property.
yeah,
I would say any,
No vehicles repair or
because
maintenance on the
again,
property.
if we're talking chippers, lawnmowers, paint guns, any of that stuff, there should be no maintenance
Yeah.
at all.
No maintenance
no
or
repair or
repair.
maintenance of equipment on property, yeah.
And no use of equipment, like you said, paint, and anything that makes noise,
Yeah, okay, I mean, yep, because it's just storage,
just storage.
yeah.
Good enough.
I think that's all, I think that's what we had covered, I'm looking
Yep.
at here.
And you think a 6-foot fence is high enough?
Looking at, when I was standing in the back, it slopes downward,
Yes.
and so anybody below, they'll see the hill and the fence. So to me, I think it's enough, I mean, I don't know
Depends
how
on
the
how
rest
high
of
the
the
truck
commission
is, I
feels.
guess.
But they've also said that they're not bringing in the commercial truck, so it'd be like a van. And the van's not gonna.
Is there,
again,
would it be then limited to certain kinds of vehicles?
No, I mean, it's a contractor's yard, so anything that contractor would bring in, but we could do 8.
Contractor's yard kind of has an umbrella over it.
It's, yeah, it's kind of large.
Yeah.
My husband was a contractor.
You wanna do 8 foot? I mean, yeah, whatever.
Yes.
Yeah, all right. Anything else? So who wants to try to make a motion of approval for, with the 3 stipulations? You want to do that since I have them written right here? That's my copy.
Yeah, I'm looking for which line it was.
Oh,
in.
it's,
That's right.
oh, there it is, yeah.
I make a motion to approve 46 Sandy Lane, Z 2437, Mario Alameda for SA Homes LLC, 46 North Lakeshore Drive in Brookfield. Special permit design review, application for commercial parking lot and outdoor equipment storage.
With the
Period.
following statement.
With the following stipulations. Hours of operation will be 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Saturdays and Sundays. A private fence to be put in stockade, 6 by 8 on the north,
8 foot.
6 by 8 foot,
8 foot high.
8 foot high,
8 foot high.
yeah.
Stockade on the north side, no repairs or maintenance of any equipment on the property, and no use of equipment on the property,
Right, thank you.
Say equipment or vehicles.
or equipment or vehicles.
Yeah, all right. Thank you, Tony. A second?
I'll second.
All right, thank you, Gwen. Any more discussion on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. That was unanimous for the record.
I was just gonna take mine.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll raise the season question, now's the time.
All right, so, do you have the,
I'm not gonna try it.
do you have the, packet for 202? Thanks.
Chairman, can we help the fire department out and move them up so they can get out to their next meeting?
Well, we already had them leave the room to do Sokos, yeah.
Okay.
It was a decision already made. Yeah, you're set. But I appreciate it. Who knows, they might be able to have their meeting before. Yeah.
I'll stay in this.
Thank you.
Introduction and the legal notices are fine.
Okay.
Kurt,
Oh, sure.
before you start, if people came in late, they may not have signed up, so.
So if they haven't, then I'll just call out whoever's not on that list. Okay, good evening. This is the introduction to the public hearing. If everybody would please settle down, please. This is a regular meeting of the Brookfield Zoning Commission. At this point in our agenda, we have scheduled a public hearing concerning the application of Danbury Slovak Gymnastic Union Sokol application Z-24-38 for a modification to a special permit and site plan. First, I'll have the members introduce themselves, starting from my left.
Dionisio Fontana,
Alternate.
alternate.
Gwen Arment, regular member.
Anthony Papucci, Vice Chairman.
Kurt Timmerman, Chairman.
Sean Turner, Secretary.
Matt Grimes, member.
Greg Petrosoni, alternate.
We will open this public hearing by calling on the Vice Chair to read the legal notice of this hearing.
Okay. Public notice was from June 19th, 2024. Brookfield Zoning Commission will hold public hearings at Town Hall, 100 Pocono Road, room 133, at 7 p.m. on August 8th, 2024 for the application by 202 Candlewood Lake Road, Z-24-38. Andrea Gomes, Esquire, for the Danbury Sokols Gymnastic Union, Sokols Incorporated, and Jason D. Lewis, Brookfield Memorial VFW Post 10201 Corp. Modification to special permit and site plan file pertinent to the Americans with Disabilities Act. 100 Pocono Road, or no, I can stop at that point, or do you want me to go through the
Yeah,
whole
you
thing?
can stop right there. Yeah, we'll do the other
Yep.
one. All right, this application was formally received by the commission on June 27th, 2024. The public hearing is only one aspect of the approval process and is for purposes of accepting factual information and data bearing on this application and to allow expression of opinion by interested parties. Subsequent to this hearing, the Commission has 65 days in which to render a decision on this proposal. Final decision may be in the form of approved as submitted, approved with stipulations, or denied. After reading into the record the correspondence received by the Commission relative to this application, we will ask the applicant to present the application in detail. The presentation will be limited to 45 minutes. The Chair will then entertain questions of clarification from the Commission and then also concerning the applicant's presentation and those from the audience. We will hear from those who wish to speak in favor of the application, followed by those who are opposed. Comments must be limited to 3 minutes given the crowd here tonight. Members of the public have one opportunity to speak during the segment of the hearing and may also submit their concerns in writing during the public hearing. During this segment, the commissioners may ask additional questions. The bylaws of the commission allow only for the presentation of similar positions in succession and preclude the intermixture of comments pro or con. All questions and comments must be directed through the chair. As you are recognized, please state your name and address so that your comments may be legally recorded. Please be assured that everyone will be given an opportunity to speak. However, the commission is most interested in hearing factual information relative to the application, and in view of time constraints placed upon us, we ask your indulgence in not reiterating comments previously presented. After the public comments are received, the applicant will have the opportunity to comment, and the time will be limited to 10 minutes. Are there any questions on the rules? Okay, we shall ask the secretary to proceed with reading of correspondence, and actually, given the number of people that wrote in, it was over 50, I noted that most of them, they all had similar messages, but we at least read one that is, where did I put that? Oh. That's representative of most of them. And I think there's a couple pieces of correspondence. Oh, where's the rest of it? Now I have to find it. This one you didn't have. Oh, here it is. Too many pieces of paper on my desk. You want to pick out any one of those letters?
Which one?
Any of them, because they all look very similar. Oh, the correspondence letters. And the last moratorium.
Yeah, I was gonna say I didn't.
Oh, did Amy print out the letters, Laura? Did Amy print out all those letters in her packets?
Yes, yeah, they were included in the packet. They might need a separate pickup files as a correspondence file because of the size of the file.
Oh.
In addition to
Oh.
the actual file.
There's some in here.
Yeah, why don't you, we'll have Tony read one of them, because they're all very similar. These are the letters in support of this proposal.
Oh, you're definitely gonna test my eyes.
Oh, is that what this was?
Mr. Chairman, would it be helpful if we pulled it up on the screen?
Well, there's so many of them.
I got one.
Oh, you got one?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I had printed one out, but she knows what happened to it.
Go for it.
Yeah.
All right, so this was submitted by Robin Montgomery, was sent to the land use. Dear Ms. Barkowski, my name is Robin Montgomery, 12 Yankee Drive, Brookfield. I'm a member of the VFW. I'm a retired police chief of Brookfield and have served in the capacity for 16 years, which I support and rightfully cause for the additional parking spaces, signage, and lighting of the site. A number of veterans in the VFW are elderly, and some, such as myself, have been declared to have disabilities by the VA. We are forced to park across at Candlewood Lake Road due to the inadequate zoning that prevents as to having more than 13 cars on the property. A property that could easily handle the additional parking without diminished property values. Given the current circumstances, there are serious accidents waiting, this is a serious accident waiting to happen. I know of only one vocal critic to the proposal, and if a survey was taken of the surrounding neighbors, it would fully endorse the additional parking. As a former employee of the town of Brookfield and former Marine with 30% disability from gunshot wounds, I do not want to see the town subject to any legal issues if one of the veterans attending the meeting once a month is hurt crossing Candlewood Lake Road. I support this application. Sincere, Robin Montgomery.
Thank you. All these letters are available at the land use office for inspection. Additionally, they are all on the website, so the commission has gotten a copy of all these letters so we could read through them and all the correspondence. We also got some correspondence from Mark Vasurka, who's the neighbor next door. Also, this is in the documents up on the website. Just some clarification of something he wrote. There was a conflation of two events that happened. One was the 2019 ZBA granted a variance to increase the parking. And then because of that, the zoning commission had to approve something because all the variances were there. And we put some conditions on it and everything. Those two were pushed together in his document. So there were actually two separate items. So when the variance was overturned, both of those unwound and back to the original.
Point of order,
special
I don't
permit.
think Tony read the legal notice.
Oh, yeah, he did.
He did.
Yep. All right. So I think that was the bulk of the correspondence.
Okay.
So letters 4 and the data package we got from Mr. Vasurka against. So if you'd like to present.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Okay, I think that's on now. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. My name's Andrea Gomes. I'm an attorney at the law firm of Hinckley Allen at 20 Church Street in Hartford, Connecticut. With me tonight are Mark Omasta, the Sokol president. We have John Kennedy next to him, the adjutant for the Brookfield VFW, and Mark Vertucci, our consulting traffic engineer with Fuss & O'Neill. His resume summarizing his vast experience on the traffic engineering, in the traffic engineering field, is in our tabbed package and thus in the record. A few procedural housekeeping matters for the record. Notice of the public hearing was properly published in the newspaper twice as required by statute. A big thank you to Ms. Barkowski and her team for taking care of that. And the applicant also did complete the required mailing to the abutters, and proof was submitted to Ms. Barkowski in advance of the hearing. The commission can see that we have a PowerPoint presentation up on the screen. The commission has hard copies. I did submit additional hard copies for the land use file in advance of tonight's meeting. So as the legal notice said, we are here tonight for the applicant's request for a reasonable accommodation pursuant to the Americans with Disabilities Act, or the ADA. The application is being treated under the advice of the Commission's counsel as a modification to the 1989 special permit and site plan, but the Commission's review standard is prescribed by the ADA, not the zoning regulations. So before we get into the requested modifications and some of the background, I thought I'd take a moment to just touch on the ADA, as that should really color the Commission's review of the application before it, and it's really the lens through which the Commission is evaluating the requested modifications. So the Americans with Disabilities Act is a 1990 federal civil rights law that prohibits discrimination against people with disabilities in everyday activities. And the ADA requires a lot of things, but relevant here is that it requires municipalities to reasonably accommodate disabled individuals by, among other things, modifying their zoning policies, practices, and procedures to provide disabled individuals with an equal opportunity to receive benefits from or participate in everyday activities and events. The most common example when people ask, what do you see when you're seeing a reasonable accommodation, is the modification of, for example, a setback to allow the construction of a wheelchair ramp. That's a very common example. There is a legal test, of course, to determine whether a reasonable accommodation is required. And while the number of elements and the verbiage used for that test vary from court to court, they're all substantively the same. And they require the applicant to show that there is a disability within the meaning of the ADA, that the requested accommodation was reasonable, which really turns on whether it will impose an undue burden on the municipality or will require a fundamental alteration of the program or the zoning scheme. And then finally, that the requested accommodation was necessary to afford the disabled individuals equal opportunities and access. Importantly, when an organization like the applicants here are requesting reasonable accommodations for disabled members, the law is clear that proof that every single member of that organization is not necessary. The courts have found that the applicant submitting proof of disability on a collective basis is sufficient for the commission to rely upon to find that there is a disability within the meaning of the ADA. So with that background, I'd like to turn now to just a brief overview of the applicants and the history of the site and how we ended up here tonight. As this commission knows, there is a lot of history here. There's been some misinformation that's been shared prior to my involvement. So one of my goals for tonight, of course, is to kind of set the record straight and populate the record with the facts. So Sokol, as the commission probably knows, was founded in Danbury in 1902, and it's a local chapter of Sokol USA. It's a nonprofit fraternal organization dedicated to the physical, cultural, educational, and moral development of its members. The Brookfield VFW is, of course, the local chapter of the Veterans of Foreign Wars, which is a federally chartered nonprofit U.S. war veterans organization. The auxiliary, which is affiliated with the VFW, is also a nonprofit, but that's for the family members of U.S. war veterans. Different organizations, but relevant here is that there's significant crossover in the memberships. So a lot of Sokol members are also VFW members and vice versa. Overall, since the Sokol's purchase of the site and beginning to use the site for its organization in 1981, membership numbers have decreased. So overall, the intensity of the use on site has decreased since the 80s. Today, Sokol has approximately 80 active members, 25% of which are disabled. The VFW has about 50 active members, almost all of whom, 98%, are disabled with a disability rating from the Veterans Administration. And the auxiliary has about 24 active members, 2 of whom are disabled. We do have an affidavit from Mr. Omasta in the tabbed package that we submitted with our original application at tab 5, certifying that these are the correct numbers. Regarding this specific site, Sokol did purchase this site in 1981, and given the crossover of its members, the VFW began leasing the site in about 2018. The applicants, together with the auxiliary, jointly use the site. Now, the site is about, would you mind going to the next slide, please? Thank you. Now, the site is about 1.07 acres, and it is located in a transitional area. The commission can see here, and I'm on slide 2, that it's a little hard to read on the screen, but the site is flagged. It says subject property on the lower left-hand corner of the aerial that's on the screen now. And directly to the north of that is a series of marine commercially zoned properties, including Candlewood East Marina, and then to the east and south of the subject property are residentially zoned parcels. I will note that the commercial uses directly north of the site are intense. They include about 500 boat slips, boat sales, storage, maintenance, and a yacht club, and that's directly north of our site. The site itself is located in the R40 zone, where clubs, lodges, and community houses are allowed by special permit. So while it is a residential zone, it's important for the commission to keep in mind this is a specially permitted use. There are additional zones in the area as well. Industrial and C2 zones are not too far away from the subject property. Would you go to the next slide, please? And this is just for the commission's view. This is another view of the site, an aerial kind of looking southeast. Again, hard to see on the screen, but you can see our property highlighted in yellow and the various commercial uses surrounding the property to the north. Next slide, please. Thank you. So in the regarding the structures on site, the commission can see here that the site has one building. It is set back pretty far from the street. I took these photos myself in March, and I'm standing essentially almost on Candlewood Lake Road, or at the beginning of the site driveway. You can see the structure, the clubhouse, located to the rear of the site. And it was once used as a single-family residence. I believe the building was built in the 1950s. But it has been used, as I noted, as a clubhouse for Sokol since 1981, since its purchase. In the late, and actually we'll go through a couple more photos if you wouldn't mind, just a couple of other views. This is a closer up view of the building on site. Next slide, please. This is a view actually of I was standing with the clubhouse to my rear, to my back, and I'm taking a photo of Candlewood Lake Road. And next slide. Thank you. And this is a view when you're standing at the site drive. You're looking northeast, I suppose, and those are Candlewood East properties that the commission can see there. So in the late 1980s, in connection with the requested building expansion on site, land use staff directed Sokol to seek approvals for the existing use. Sokol received variance and special permit approvals in, I believe, 1988 and 1989, but those approvals included conditions, a number of conditions, but conditions relevant here, limiting parking on site to no more than 13 parking spaces. The special permit approval also provided that additions to lighting would require commission approval and that no additional signage would be permitted on site. And that is in the commission's packet, I believe, at page 2. From that point on, Sokol continued to operate. Eventually, and sometimes when there were larger events, there were more than 13 cars parked on site because that was what was needed to accommodate its disabled membership. There were no complaints for years, and dare I say decades. There were no complaints from neighbors, from guests, or from anyone at the town. The applicant also allowed the neighbor directly to the south, Mr. Vasirka, to park his vehicles and those of his guests on Sokol property when there were events, private events hosted by him. Those times there were certainly more than 13 vehicles parked on site and no one complained. Unfortunately, when that relationship broke down in about 2014, Mr. Vasirka began complaining to the town regarding the applicant's use of more than the 13 spaces. And so it began the what I'll call Sokol's land use saga, and eventually why we ended up here tonight. Ultimately, in I believe it was 2014, Sokol sought a variance to allow more parking. That variance was denied. And then in 2019, if you can go to the next site, this is a December 2018 plan showing the conditions of the site in December 2018, thereabouts. And then in 2019, Sokol received and the VFW received approvals from both the ZBA and this commission to allow up to 30 parking spaces and accompanying improvements, including privacy plantings along the southerly property line. If you could go to the next slide, please. Thank you. Oh, sorry, slide 10. Thank you. And this is that plan that was approved by the commission. The applicants constructed those spaces and installed those plantings. The plantings are still there today, as are the spaces. But unfortunately, those approvals were overturned in 2021. In 2023, based on complaints received, the applicants received a cease and desist for parking more than 13 cars on site. The applicants again appealed to the ZBA, but also filed a rezoning application with this commission to rezone the site to the marine commercial. The ZBA upheld the zoning enforcement official's cease and desist order, and this commission denied the rezoning application. The applicants appealed to preserve their rights, but at that point, that's when they hired Hinckley Allen and brought us on to see if we could take a fresh look at the situation and see if there was a viable path forward to addressing these significant concerns with parking, lighting, and signage. Ultimately, as I mentioned, the appeals were withdrawn. And today, if you can go to the next slide, please. So today, there are still those 30 parking spaces on site, but only 13 can be used. There is no signage at the frontage, and there is no lighting in the parking lot except for what little lighting comes off the building itself. members who want to come and don't have the ability, if there are already 13 cars on site, fortunately our neighbor to the north, Candlewood East, through Mr. O'Hara, has been very kind and has allowed our members, if they are brave enough, to park on Candlewood East property, which the commission can see here, northeast of the site. Our members and guests will park, cross the street, sometimes at night, again, not with much lighting, and traverse down Candlewood Lake Road to access our site. And that's what members are forced to do if there are more than 13 cars, or if there are 13 cars already parked on site. Now the proposal, next slide please. The proposal before the commission today is to construct 19 additional parking spaces using either gravel or millings for a total of 49 usable spaces on site. It is difficult to see here, unfortunately, but there is a line demarcating where the existing parking lot is and where the new proposed parking will be. The commission will note that we have designed the parking area to allow for on-site circulation, so there's no need to turn around. Vehicles can fully circulate on site without having to reverse, and again, it's all about enhancing safety here, particularly for the disabled members who are using the site, and in fact, it's better for emergency access and emergency services as well. Our request, next slide please, also includes the addition of signage at the street frontage. We have proposed signage beyond the setback and in the appropriate areas required by the zoning regulations. And we'll come back to the signage in just a moment, but the commission can see here the proposed sign itself will be about 4 to 8 feet wide. The suggestion was to mount the sign on wooden posts, but the applicant is of course willing to discuss with the commission if it would prefer stone posts, but we put 2 images there for the commission's consideration. And also, next slide please, the proposal includes the addition of parking lot lighting, again, to enhance circulation and safety, particularly when it is late at night or there are the lighting is low, particularly during the winter. And what I've included here are some snips of what the actual parking lot lighting will look like. It's something I'm sure the commission has seen a number of other parking lots. And in the top right corner, that image there, that's a really interesting image. It's akin to a photometric plan, but it shows essentially what the lighting would look like once it's dark out and all the lighting is on. There is very, very minimal trespass beyond the property lines, and there is a photometric plan in the commission's plan for its evaluation. So again, we are looking not whether we meet the tests set by the ADA for a reasonable accommodation, not the zoning regulations, but it's still helpful for the commission to compare what Sokol and the VFW are requesting to what's permitted by the zoning regulations. So regarding parking, there is no standard in the zoning regulations, I believe it's table 6.2, for clubs or lodges. And the closest use in section 6.2 that I saw would probably be an assembly hall, which requires 1 space for every 3 seats. This club is limited to 115 capacity by the fire marshal, so I took that number and applied it to that formula, and that gets us to 39 parking spaces. Obviously more than the 13 we're currently allowed to have on site. That being said, the assembly hall is not directly on point. We don't really meet that definition. So the regulations do something that's actually fairly interesting. It says if a use is not listed in the parking table, the commission can do one of 2 things. It can rely on the parking generation manual in the developed by the Institute of Transportation Engineers, or it can rely on evidence provided by a traffic engineer on comparable developments. So luckily, I am not a traffic engineer, but we do have Mr. Vertucci here who will get up in just a few moments to talk to the commission about the number of parking spaces on site. Regarding signage, and if you wouldn't mind going back to slide 13, just so the commission and public has that. Thank you. So the regulations permit in the R40 a 6 square foot sign. Obviously, we are proposing something that is larger than that. I think it is relevant for the commission to consider 2 things, and of course, keeping in mind that this is all to allow for appropriate visibility, particularly for our disabled members. But the Candlewood East sign directly north of our property is about 21 square feet in size and on a stone base that's 12 feet long. Yes, it is a different zone, the applicant acknowledges that, but the purpose of a sign, particularly at the street front, is to safely alert passersby to a driveway and to a use on site. So given that that's the purpose of the sign, for Sokol and the VFW, 6 square feet is just not going to do it, particularly here where Candlewood Lake tends to crest, which again, Mr. Vertucci will touch on during his portion of the presentation. On lighting, I will say we comply with the zoning regulations. Certainly the commission can look to Ms. Barkowski on that, but of course the lighting proposed is tied to the proposed parking lot modification, so we looped that in with the reasonable accommodation. So to be clear, the nature and intensity of the use on site here is not changing, and I want to make that abundantly clear here. It has been a social club since 1981. It will continue to be a social club going forward. Membership will increase and decrease as it always has, but not related to these reasonable accommodations. And the number of events and meetings will remain the same. What we're allowing here is we're affording those members who are disabled equal opportunity to access the site without fearing for their safety. And the commission will hear during tonight's public hearing presentation, as well as probably during the public comment, that there are members who are disabled and have not been able to access the site as a result of insufficient parking, lighting, and then concerns with accessing the site with signage. There also were, and I'll just note, in going through the history of this site, there have been discussions, both before this commission and I believe the ZBA, regarding the importance of preserving this particular site as a transitional piece of property or a buffer between the marine commercial zone properties to the north and the residentially zoned parcels to the south and east, essentially preventing commercial creep into a residential area. And we agree. We absolutely agree. And the best way to do that is to take a less intense use, such as a social club or a nonprofit fraternal organization, and to allow that to continue to operate as it has been. And I wanted to just put that on the record as well. And the proposed accommodations do not change that. Now, I'll note for the record, we have a number of what I'm calling staff comments that are in the record. We have a June 2024 joint letter from Major Frangs as the member of a Brookfield Police Department, an agent of the local traffic authority, and Chair Nancy on behalf of the Brookfield Police Commission also authored a letter. Brookfield Police Commission is the local traffic authority here. And they confirmed that there are no sightline concerns or adverse impacts from the proposed improvements. Goes on to state just generally no objections or concerns to the proposal. We have a June 2024 letter from the Candlewood Fire Department Chief confirming that the proposed modifications will not impact fire department response. He goes on to state that the better lighting and signage will actually help first responders getting to the site. The fire marshal and the inland wetland officer have signed off on the application, and then DPW requested a driveway permit if the curb cut is going to be modified, but here, as the commission can see on the plan, we're not touching the curb cut, so no permit would be needed. Now, if you can go, I think, starting slide 15, please. Thank you. Now, as Mr. Chairman, you noted at the beginning of the hearing, I believe there were over 50 or even 55 letters in support that were submitted into the record. I did, just as a belt and suspenders move, I took those letters, I combined them, and I resubmitted them because many of them were actually submitted before the commission elected to hold a public hearing. So just in case there was a bit of a divorce there between the public hearing record and what was submitted in advance, I resubmitted those letters. Many of those letters were authored by members of the applicant organizations. I'm not certainly going to read the letters. There were too many, we'd be here all night, but I do want to highlight a few that I think are helpful for the commission. The first one we have here is one authored by Thomas Kennedy. He is a deaf auxiliary member. Remember, the auxiliary is for family members of U.S. war veterans. And also the son of Mr. Kennedy. When he's forced to walk to the club because of the restrictions on site, he notes in here that he fears for his safety in doing so. Next letter is the letter that I believe was read into the record by you, Mr. Vice Chair, from Mr. Montgomery. I won't touch on that again, but again, we have a retired police chief for Brookfield explaining his disability, his concerns with access to the property, and his belief that this is appropriate and there's plenty of space on site. Now, the next three letters, we'll start with 17, are letters from our neighbors. So we have letters from Mr. O'Hara from Candlewood East. This is at slide 17. Slide 18, I believe, is Mr. G. Marino, who's at 190 Candlewood Lake Road. And then we have Thomas and Tracy Emro at slide 19 of 185 Candlewood Lake Road. And these are our direct neighbors to the site. All took the time out of their days to support the application, which was very meaningful here. And I think there's a couple of themes I wanted to point out with these letters in particular. Each of them expressed concerns for safety, particularly for the disabled members due to the lack of parking, and concerns with the inability of members to access the site for events and services. The letters are also important to show that, notwithstanding repeated complaints from Mr. Vasirka regarding the allegedly intense use of the site, we have 3 other neighbors directly around the site confirming that Sokol and the VFW are good neighbors and that the use of the site does not adversely impact the surrounding neighborhood. And I think that's very telling here, and I'm sure you'll hear from at least some of them during public comment. Lastly, before I turn this over, Mr. Chairman, and I appreciate the Commission's patience, I will note, of course, the Commission knows that it received a memorandum from Attorney Beecher, counsel for the Commission. Generally, I agree with Mr. Beecher's recitation of the law on ADA and reasonable accommodations. Failure to accommodate an applicant is considered discrimination under the ADA. I will say Mr. Attorney Beecher, likens the application to a variance, and he did liken it. He did not say it was the same, but I want to just make it clear for the record, because I've seen in at least one of the letters submitted that the word hardship is being thrown around, and I just wanted to clarify for the record that this is not a variance, and therefore legal hardship is not a standard that's applicable here. Attorney Beecher also does a couple of things. He suggests that the Commission, if it were to approve this application, incorporate a sunset provision so that these reasonable accommodations cease to exist if the need for the accommodation no longer exists. For example, if ownership changes hands down the line. He also suggested that the applicants provide periodic certifications, recertifying to the Commission and town staff that the reasonable accommodation is still necessary. For the record, the applicants accept those conditions. We'd be happy to work on language. We would just suggest that if the Commission is going to put a sunset provision, that it just makes it clear for the record that any new applicant or any new situation, if it were, for example, to be Sokol at some future time, would be open, as would any property owner, to come in and file a new application for different parking or different situation on site as well. Attorney Beecher also suggests that we move lighting away from the southerly property line that abuts Mr. Vasirka's site to avoid impacts from Mr. Vasirka. As I noted, the Commission has a photometric plan in its packet. There is very minimal light trespass. I think there's one 0.3 candle beyond the property line and maybe one 0.1 close to the street front, but we would accept a condition of approval that we will work with our vendor to ensure that is 0 across the property line to ensure that we're not having any light trespass. So, Mr. Chairman, what I'm going to do is I'm going to hand it over to Mr. Omasta. He's just going to touch on the operations of the site, what happens at this site on the day-to-day. Mr. Kennedy is then going to weigh in on the access issues that members have had due to their disabilities as a result of these restrictions, and then I'd request an ability to wrap up. Thank you. Oh, and I'm sorry. I neglected our lovely traffic engineer who I work with all the time, and Mark Vertucci will, of course, I'm not skipping Mark. Mark Vertucci will, of course, stand up and talk about the letter he submitted. Thank you. Sorry.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and Zoning Commission members. My name is Mark Omasta. I live at 16 Driftway Point Road, Danbury, Connecticut. I was a firefighter for 40 years and retired as chief of the Danbury Fire Department. I'm a lifelong Sokol member, serving on the board of directors for many years, coached our 16 and 18-year-old baseball team for many years, and I've been president of Sokol Lodge 30 since 2018. Our Sokol vice president is here, John Kennedy, who was also a long-term board member and our VP since 2018. Our Lodge 30 is one of 77 lodges across the country. John serves, actually, he was elected as the National Fraternal Secretary of Sokol USA. That's an elected position and the highest office one could hold in Sokol USA. I was asked to speak a little bit about club usage. So how is this property utilized and by whom? The lodge is a private club, as you know. Members in good standing are issued a key fob, which gives them access to the club from 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. daily. However, the building is empty probably 80 to 90% of the time. There are no bedrooms, no one ever stays there at night. Members may also reserve the club for 4-hour blocks for private functions, such as a picnic, anniversary party, family celebrations. We've even hosted a few weddings over the 40 years we've been there. Why not? It's a beautiful lakefront property. All private events, however, require board approval through an application process. We're averaging only 8 of these private events over the last 10 years. This is a big reduction in property usage from the previous 20 years. The main reason the club usage is down is the lack of adequate on-site parking. Members and guests, especially seniors and folks with disabilities, cannot and should not try to find off-site parking and then take their life in their hands by attempting to walk across very busy Candlewood Lake Road. Our good neighbor at Candlewood East, Mitch O'Hara, he's over there, has been very generous in allowing our members to utilize his parking lot across the street when it's available. But he too will admit it makes him very nervous that people and our members have to navigate Candlewood Lake Road on foot, especially at night. Another reason for the drop-off in usage is the anxiety caused because the host of a function is all wound up trying to assure that there's no more than 13 cars on site. Imagine having a function, a family picnic, and you have someone counting cars constantly. It does not make for a relaxing situation. Because they know that the neighbor to our south is either looking through trees or sitting across the street in his car taking photos constantly of us, or he even flies drones over our heads and counts cars, and then he'll send his findings to the zoning enforcement officer. Besides the casual use by members and the rare private event, the lodge meets 6 times per year for a full membership every other month. The board meets monthly. Many members now refrain from attending membership meetings and gatherings due to the restricted parking. Half of the Sokol membership, that's 40 people, are over the age of 60. 20 of them are over the age of 70. We have 10 active members that are 80 years plus. And we actually have a couple active members that are 90 years old plus. 25% of our Sokol members have disabilities. We have over an acre of flat lot that could easily accommodate our engineered plan for 49 spaces, and are just asking for reasonable, safe, common sense accommodations. Our great friends in the Jason D. Lewis, Brookfield VFW, and Auxiliary experience similar access issues for their meetings. We have worked very hard with the VFW for the last 5 years to make big improvements to the property, both inside and out, in the grounds, and we would welcome the chance to enjoy this spectacular setting on Lake Candlewood without ongoing harassment, especially from our neighbor to the south who just doesn't want us to be there. Thank you very much for your time.
Sir?
Good evening, Chairman Timmerman.
Can you announce your name and?
Oh, I'm sorry. My name is John Kennedy. I live at 63 Elbow Hill Road, Brookfield, Connecticut. I've lived there for 24 years. I've been a resident of Brookfield for 25 years. Good evening, Chairman Timmerman and Commission members. I'm the post adjutant for the Jason D. Lewis Brookfield Memorial VFW Post. It was named after Jason D. Lewis, a son of Brookfield who was killed tragically in Iraq in combat, serving our country. I'm also the state vice commander of the Department of Connecticut VFW, voted unanimously at the 102nd State VFW Convention. In addition, I am the town veteran representative, unanimously appointed by the Board of Selectmen. I honorably served our country proudly in the United States Navy Seabees, and I have a 60% VA disability rating for my service during my time in the military. The VFW is the oldest and largest combat veterans organization in the United States with 1.4 million members nationwide and Europe and the Pacific areas. 98% of our active members, 95% of all our members have a disability rating. In addition to that, as the town veteran representative, we host the State Department of Veterans Affairs service officers at our post twice a month to come in and do veterans claims. Since the signing of the PACT Act in 2022, many members of the veteran community, veterans from the Vietnam War for exposure to Agent Orange, Brown Water Navy veterans, and veterans that were exposed to burn pits throughout the Gulf War and the War on Terrorism, come to file benefits for much needed resources. Routinely, I hear this from members of our community, widows, veterans, their children that bring them to our post, that they have difficulties finding the place. And if there's more than 13 cars, they have to turn away and go park off site and try to walk over. Most recently, I had a 94-year-old widow who is a Brookfield resident who came to get benefits for her husband. And her daughter, because there were 14 cars, there were 13 in our lot and one sitting out in Candlewood Lake Road in front of Candlewood East, waiting to pull in for somebody to leave, called me and said, I can't do this. My mother's a wreck. She's here to get benefits for her husband, and I just don't have the time or the patience to deal with this. Why can't the town fix this problem? And I said to her, please do me a favor and call the first selectman and tell them your story. The problem here is that we continually hear bad things about our members, bad things about veterans. I'm sure you'll hear I'm the worst person in this room. However, you don't get elected by 9,876 members of the VFW to my position to represent the state of Connecticut by being a bad person. The building occupancy set by the fire marshal is 115 persons. Ironically, today I had to have a conversation with the the fire marshal over this very issue because a complaint was made to the state fire marshal. Again, this is like the third time we've had to go through this with the fire marshal. I don't make up the numbers. This is set by fire code by the state fire marshal. That's the number it is, 115 people. So the bottom line is that the parking is essential to our veterans. And for those that have served in this room, and I know there's many of them, and maybe some members that aren't, maybe some veterans in the room that aren't members, you'd understand that we wrote a blank check to this country to defend it and to honor it and to follow the Constitution of the United States. And the treatment that we get sometimes is not what it should be. So I asked this commission to really look at the evidence, look at the facts, not the words of people that are against this, and go on the basis of what is needed for our veteran community and for our elderly veterans, disabled veterans to access a place that they belong at. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, John. Mr. Chairman, again, for the record, Andre Gomes, counsel for the applicants. I think at this point I'd defer to you, Mr. Chairman, but I would reserve my closing comments perhaps in lieu of public comment because we do have a lot of people here, so I can sit down and then after public comment I will I know you said I have 10 minutes for rebuttal, but.
Yeah, and I have a couple.
Oh,
I
absolutely.
have some questions of clarification.
Absolutely.
So.
Oh, and I'm sorry. I keep doing that to Mark. Mark, I'm sorry. I keep doing that to Mark. I'm sorry. I know. I'm sorry, Mark.
No, that's all right.
Mr. Chairman, if it's
Yeah.
okay, Mark will present and then I apologize.
Good evening again. I'm Mark Fertucci. I'm a senior transportation engineer at Fuss & O'Neill in Manchester. Also a registered professional engineer in Connecticut and a certified professional traffic operations engineer. So I just want to briefly describe the findings of the parking lot traffic and safety evaluation that we did prepare and we submitted back in June. Just to go over existing conditions quickly, the site being located at 202 Candlewood Lake Road on the west side of the road. The site driveway is approximately opposite Kennan Road, which is a residential development. The DOT recorded an average daily traffic of 5,400 vehicles on the road. The 85th percentile speed was 43 miles per hour, which is actually about 8 miles per hour over the posted speed limit of 35 miles per hour. Due to the insufficient parking on the site, has been discussed numerous times already. People are parking across the street, they're walking along the road, often in dark conditions, and crossing the street. So again, that's a very unsafe condition. There's no sidewalks along the road, no crosswalks in the immediate vicinity of the site. There is a crest to the south of the road, so you have a condition where northbound vehicles are accelerating on the downhill towards the site driveway where people are crossing. And as I'll explain in a minute, the stopping site distances are marginal out there. There is a crosswalk to the north up at the Echo Bay Marina, but it's 200 feet away, so not really a great option for them to cross that. It's also non-ADA compliant. There was a pedestrian fatality in 2019 in the vicinity of 279 Candlewood Lake Road. Again, it was somebody walking along the road, and because there's no sidewalks, and they were struck and unfortunately killed. So this is a significant safety concern. There's no existing signage out there as well, alerting drivers that are approaching that there is a driveway there, and only one street light, which is kind of in the middle of the parking lot, so not much illumination at the driveway either. The interior parking lot design currently does not have sufficient room for someone to come in and kind of do a drop-off and loop back out, so no real defined pickup drop-off area. A lot of the vehicles will come in, they have to pull in and back up and then come back out if they're dropping somebody off. In the proposed condition, as has been discussed, there will be 49 parking spaces. We feel this will ensure adequate parking for the majority of the meetings and events on the site based on the operational data that has been provided by the applicant, which again is approximately 20 to 30 people at the monthly meetings. For larger events, anywhere from 20 up to 100 people. There really is one of the industry standards in determining parking generation is the ITE, Institute of Transportation Engineers Parking Generation Manual, but there's no real comparable use in that guidance. So really the next best thing is to go off of actual operational data at the site, which is really what we're doing here. So for these larger events where we could see upwards of 80 to 100 people, conservatively assuming vehicles arriving with 2 people per car would yield approximately 50 spaces, and we're proposing the 49 here. So we feel that will be sufficient. Having the adequate parking, again, will reduce and in most cases eliminate the need for off-site parking, greatly improving the safety for pedestrians. The proposed lighting plan will improve safety within the lot, but also for locating the driveway for visitors to the site. There's really nothing there to signify there's a driveway. There's no sign, there's no light. today. So the lighting will help with locating the driveway. The proposed signage, same deal, will draw attention to the driveway for visitors, but also for just through vehicle traffic coming north and south on the road. It will alert people that this is a location where you could see turning traffic into and out of the driveway. And of course, the parking lot layout proposed that Andrea showed earlier has a nice loop of parking, so somebody can pull in, do a drop-off, loop back out without having to make a backing maneuver in the site. Whenever you have a backing maneuver in a parking area, you always run the risk of a vehicle-to-vehicle or a vehicle-to-pedestrian collision. From a traffic generation standpoint, again, there is no change in existing use and operations proposed, so there will be no increase in traffic generated by these proposed changes. The advantage here is we will be consolidating all the entrance and exiting traffic at the site driveway rather than having them spread all throughout the neighborhood. So that is safer for operations. We did review stopping site distance at the site driveway. It was measured in accordance with criteria in the DOT Highway Design Manual. And 4 of the speeds that were recorded, we do meet the stopping site distance in the northbound direction coming downhill. We just meet it for vehicular traffic. Coming southbound direction, we're well in excess of the stopping site distance requirement. So there is sufficient stopping site distance for a vehicle to be able to slow down and stop approaching the site driveway where there's obviously turning traffic. Given we're so marginal, though, in the southbound direction with the stopping site distance, this is not a location that I would recommend for a pedestrian crossing. We typically like to see a lot more, site distance in excess of the minimum requirement. So, and again, this is where those pedestrians are crossing. So we want to eliminate that crossing movement if possible here. We also looked at crash data, reviewed the latest 3 years available in the Yukon crash repository, and there were no vehicular crashes identified at the site driveway for vehicles turning in or out of the site driveway. So the driveway has been operating safely, and we expect will continue to do so with the proposed improvements. And again, I did mention that unfortunate pedestrian fatality back in 2019 due to the unsafe walking conditions along the road. And lastly, as Andre had mentioned, the police department, Interlegal Traffic Authority, and the fire department have again signed off on this. They had no objections to our proposal, and it did agree the proposed improvements are safe. Just to wrap up, the conclusion of our traffic and parking review is that the proposed parking lot expansion, along with the proposed signage and lighting improvements on the property, will significantly improve the safety of vehicular and pedestrian access and circulation, both within the site as well as in the immediate vicinity of the site. And with that, I will now let Andrea. Thank you.
I didn't mean anything by it. Thank you, Mark. With that, Mr. Chairman, now I will say, of course, I apologize for that. Happy to take any questions the commission may have.
I guess my first question is, are you aware of our regs concerning a club in the residential zone?
In what regard?
Well, in regard
the answer is yes, but in what regard?
So in regard to the space and everything, the reason I mentioned it, and this goes back to the original variance and the original special permit in '89, was that normally we have 120,000 square feet as a requirement for clubs in a residential zone. And this is for the edification, because a lot of these commission members haven't come in front of this sort of club in a residence. And lot widths were 300 feet, rear yards were 50 feet setbacks, and the side yards were 75. And the reason it was like that, and for churches too, was so that when they're in a residential zone, they don't impact the residential nature of the residences that abut them. And of course, as you mentioned, this site is about 40,000 square feet, or 1 acre is 42,000 square feet. So the reason those were there, the reason for the regs is to protect the neighbors. And in fact, in the 89 approval, 89-9, the zoning commission felt that the ZBA at the time should not have given that variance, and they marked it as excessive and contrary to the spirit and intent of the regs. So I think this goes to the heart of why there's an issue with this. It's the intense use, and it's a small property. Normally it's much bigger. So that's the reason I bring that up.
May I, Mr.
And I think that's pertinent for the members to know, you know, when we're talking about a club and residents, what's normal and what does this variance do for this particular site?
Understood. And if I may, Mr. Chairman, first, and I do have to say this as applicant's counsel, of course, we're looking at this through the lens of the ADA reasonable accommodation test. So I just want to set that stage. But I understand your concern, Mr. Chairman. This is an existing site. It's been operating as a club for over 40 years. I understand that the regulations certainly are in place. I did not go back and trace the regulations to see when that was modified to ensure that it was those sizes and those variances. But obviously, we're looking at variances that go back as far as 1988. I understand that the commission commented at that time that the variances were excessive. Again, I respectfully say that that's not within the commission's purview. That was the ZBA to look at that, and the ZBA thought they were appropriate, subject to a modification. But of course, we're now looking at this under the lens of the ADA. We have different membership than we did in the 80s, different situation. The law is certainly different. Obviously, ADA was in 1990, so this all happened before then. So I understand your concerns, Mr. Chairman, but part of what we tried to do tonight through the testimony of Mr. Omasta and Mr. Kennedy, the letters that we have in the record, the affidavit, is to explain to the commission that this is not that intense of a use. If going back through the record as, you know, the new person on the team, so to speak, a number of months ago, it was very interesting. I saw a lot of comments about how it's a bunch of guys playing cards, yet at the same time, it's a very, very intense club use that adversely impacts the neighbors. It's either one or the other. You can't have the most intense use and the least intense use that has no value. So part of what we were trying to do today was set the record straight. You heard Mr. Omasta, they meet board meets 6 times a year, 20 to 30 people. You have, monthly board meetings and then membership meetings 6 times a year, 8 events. I will say we combed through the records, and Sokol and VFW have good records of the events, who requested it, on what date, how many people, et cetera, et cetera. And we went back and calculated that average, and it was 8 events per year. Most of those were under 60 people. There were a couple that were closer to 100, but of course that's all subject to board approval. And I will say for the record that we did not include 2020 when COVID happened. So that 8 per year is conservative, not including 2020. So I understand the commission's concerns regarding adverse impacts. I think that the evidence before the commission is that there are none here. We have letters from other neighbors, Mr. O'Hara, G. Marino, the Enrose. They have no issues with it. And in fact, they're concerned with the current state of things with disabled folks trying to cross a very dangerous road. That frankly that's concerning. So I understand, but we're trying to kind of dispel that in this record.
Speaking of the property north and parking.
Yes.
Actually, off-site parking across the street is against our regulations for that very reason, our safety. It's a safety aspect. We allow off-site parking on abutting properties.
The shared parking regulation, yes.
Has the VFW or Sokol looked to have a parking agreement with Candlewood East just north of it rather than across the street?
I don't know if that was an option. I'd say probably not, given the use of Candlewood East. I'm certain, I'm not going to speak for Mr. O'Hara, but I'm certain that they want to preserve their parking lot for their particular business. But all the more reason, Mr. Chairman, and I understand shared parking is not allowed, but for that agreement, I saw that regulation certainly in my review. But again, that's all the more reason that we need this reasonable accommodation. If Mr. Lally issues a cease and desist tomorrow, you are truly prohibiting more than 13 disabled folks at a time accessing the site. That's all the more reason that this reasonable accommodation is necessary for our disabled members to have equal opportunity to access the site.
And the sign, speaking of the sign.
Yes.
How is that directly supported by reasonable accommodation? Because if someone's driving, how are they different from anybody else driving into a site such as this? And not, you know, a disabled person would still have to see in order to drive the car. And how does a need for a sign fit that, you know, accommodation?
Understood. So you have two things. You have the ability to see the sign, recognize what it's for, recognize that the driveway's there, and slow down and stop. But you also have pedestrians circulating on site. So someone, even if they're not disabled and they're turning into the site too quickly, that could potentially endanger and prohibit people, other disabled members who are circulating on site. So signs are there. Obviously, they're there to advertise the use, of course, but they are also there as a safety mechanism, and it directly impacts safety and ability to access the site safely for people of all abilities.
Yeah, okay. I mean, the concern is the sign makes it more commercial when this is actually a residential lot.
Understood.
So that commercial creep that we don't want the MC to get larger,
Understood.
sort of makes it look like a commercial property.
And certainly, if the commission has suggestions or requests on reducing the size of the sign, we can certainly discuss with the applicant. That's not it's something we'd be willing to discuss. We propose the sign that we'd like to see there, but because the 6 square feet allowed by the regulations was certainly not going to do it for the membership. But if the commission has a request to reduce the sign, I'm sure that's something that the applicants would be willing to discuss.
All right. Do commission members have any questions of clarification before I open it up to the audience?
Well, I have a number, but I have one. The members can reserve the space for parties.
Correct.
Do they reserve the space for their friends for parties?
Are they allowed to reserve? I don't believe so. No, they have to reserve. Members only. And I'm representing for the record Mr. Omesta and Mr. Kennedy. We're saying no, members only.
So even if a member isn't part of it, a member cannot reserve for somebody outside.
That's correct, right? Yes, so I will consider myself a friend of Sokol and VFW.
No, you can't.
Oh, John, come up here for the record. If you can just reintroduce yourself.
John Kennedy, 63 Elbow Hill Road. If a member reserves the club for a function, they have to be on site the whole time the function's there. They can't reserve it for their friend, whether it be the gentleman sitting up here in the front row. It doesn't work that way.
But I know that to not be true.
Commissioner, can you explain? Because I'm hearing
that somebody reserved for a friend's function.
All right, if you could provide us with that information, we have the records, we can look back at.
Yeah, so we can,
The member you're talking about.
I'm not sure that person's a member anymore.
Well, Mr. Chairman.
well, you know what, we can take that
But
offline if you have a concern.
that's why
you
I
can
asked the
talk, yeah.
question, and I knew that happened.
I think I know who we're referring to. That member that you're referring to, and I know who you're speaking of, got denied at the board level because she said, I want to reserve it for a friend's function. And we said, no, that's not what you're allowed to do. So thank you.
And Mr. Chairman, just for the record, if I may, and this is with all due respect, Commissioner, but if there's going to be an allegation made that we're misrepresenting, we need the details of that so we can appropriately respond.
No, if there's something like that, then
It
they can
didn't
talk
happen.
to the
It
Sokols.
didn't happen.
So it didn't happen.
All right, please, you know, it's between the
Thank you,
presenter
Mr.
and
Chairman.
committee.
So and again, Mr. Chairman, through you respectfully, Commissioner, so it did not happen. There was no reservation and no event.
The event did not happen
Okay, perfect.
because of what happened here last year. Okay.
The event did not happen. Commissioners, if you would like to impose an approval condition that only members can reserve the site and have to be on site at all times, that's our existing practice anyway, we'd be happy to accept that as an approval condition.
We can take that up in deliberations.
Thank you.
Yes?
Can I ask Attorney Beecher Summer, we'll wait till deliberations for that?
Well, a point of order, or?
No, I just.
If you want clarification.
I want clarification about his letter because it was referred to in this, but I can wait till deliberations for that.
No, I mean, it was public data, so we can get clarification on that, sure.
Tom, could you just discuss the commission standard of review? We heard about it from the applicant, but since you advised us on it, what our standard of review is as far as this application is concerned?
Well, the applicant's attorney is correct that for this particular application, you have to look to see whether or not under the ADA, you should make a reasonable accommodation that may vary your regulations or vary the original site plan application. And that's why I did liken it to a variance, even though it's not a variance. They don't have to show a hardship, she's correct. But under the ADA, if they do provide evidence to this commission of disabilities that require the accommodation, then you must consider that. If the accommodation is actually reasonable in light of the disabilities that they assert or prove.
Thank you, Tom.
All right. Any other commissioners have?
Yeah, I have a question about the lighting.
Yes.
I'm wondering how much of the lighting is gonna impact the neighbor, and if it's gonna impact the neighbor, are you willing to make accommodations,
You mean
lessen
the
that
neighbor to the
impact?
south?
The neighbor to the south, yeah.
Certainly, that's up for discussion, Commissioner. Our point with the lighting was to ensure that our members, particularly those with disabilities, can safely circulate on site regardless of I'll call it the weather conditions, but it's the lighting conditions, of course. We did our best to ensure that all of the parking areas were lighted without trespass. If you look at the photometric plan, I think there is one candle that's 0.3, perhaps just beyond the property line. But again, we'd be willing to accept a condition of approval to pull that back a bit to ensure that there is zero trespass. If the commission also wanted to institute, I'm going to look to the applicants if the commission wanted to institute hours. So when the club closes, the lights turn off. The normal club operations, which I believe are until 10 p.m. Yeah, 10 p.m. the lights can be turned off, and that will ensure that there's no further impacts beyond those normal operating hours.
Thank you.
Yes, would you consider the lights when you have the vents, the 8 or 10 vents you have here beyond, but the little vents, do you want the lights on 7 days a week during those hours? Or will you consider just during the big events having the lights on? Because
So-
right now, there are no lights on there at all.
Correct, Commissioner. There's no light other than what's coming off of the building. So as you heard Mr. Omasta say, the members are able to access the site from what hour in the morning? 8 a.m. through 10 p.m. via key fob access. We want to ensure that those members, even if it's only one or two, are safely circulating on site at all times, even when it's dark. So we'd ask that we be allowed to keep the lights on at a minimum through those operating hours. Again, happy to accept a condition of approval that we will turn them off beyond operating hours, but that would be our request. If there's something else the commission's considering, please let me know, and we can discuss with the applicant during public comment.
Like a motion sensor, they shut off when no one's outside, but when someone comes out, they come on.
Motion sensor? We'd be willing to accept a motion sensor.
And
Coming in and out all
the light coming in, the entrance, the VFW, that be always lit up through the nighttime?
The sign?
The sign, I didn't see any lights.
Currently, there's no proposed illumination for the sign because we wanted to just kind of cross that bridge when we come to it. But currently, there's no sign illumination, I don't believe.
Question, you had a question?
Yeah, a question for the actual construction of the driveway.
Yes.
For the 49, in the documents, and again, the site is hard to kind of ascertain it.
Yes.
It says that it's going to be gravel.
Or millings.
Or milling. So that's my question. Has that been, and again, it might be premature at this point, but getting an understanding of that drainage and or runoff, depending on, are you building up or are you actually going down to actually put the pavement or the stone or the driveway for that? And how has that actually changed the topography?
So we have not designed the grading, if you will, for the site. Part of the reason we proposed gravel or millings was in pre-application discussions with town staff. That was suggested to avoid having to redesign an entire stormwater management site. So we have not discussed that. Certainly we're going to grade the site to ensure that it doesn't adversely impact any other portion of our site or any other property nearby, but that has not been established. We were hoping to cross this bridge first.
That's fine, that's why I was asking, and I
Yep.
figured as much, but I wanted to get that, because it was talking gravel or milling, and most of it's grass. Again, it's very limited of what is the actual parking space.
Yes. Yes, and if you look at our proposed plan, which is at tab 4, I believe, it's hard to see in the PowerPoint.
It is, that's why I said that, from
Yeah.
the picture, I looked at it and kind of, yeah.
Yes, there is a hatched line that indicates where the new area will be, which is more towards the southerly end of the site, but
So most of the grass will be taken.
I wouldn't say most, Commissioner. If you look, there will still be a significant, there will be a grassed area along the southerly portion of the site, but certainly a portion of the existing grass will be removed to provide for the gravel or millings for the new parking area.
Which are pervious.
Yes.
Any other questions from the commissioners? No? All right, is there anybody who would like to ask a question of clarification? I'm not going for pros and cons, just questions of clarification of what you heard tonight regarding this application. All right, so I'm going to hear from those supporting, and I'll go for the list here first and then ask if anybody who hasn't had a chance to put their name on beyond that.
I'm sorry.
Oh, all right. Oh, one more question.
I'm sorry. How many VFW members are there?
There are currently, for Brookfield VFW, there are currently 50 active members, again, 98% of which are disabled. 50, yes.
And 80 SOCO members.
80 SOCO members, yes, but there is crossover among those numbers, and we're looking at active members.
All right, thank you. Jean Mariano, would you like to come up and state your name, which I've stated, and your address? 3 minutes for comments, and our timer will let you know when it's almost up.
Well, tell me when I've taken too long. My name is Jean Mariano. I live at 22 Wakely Road in Roxbury, Connecticut. I am the president of the VFW Auxiliary, and I'm also, give you a little background, I'm also a Gold Star mother, all right? My son, Jason Lewis, obviously grew up in Brookfield, died in Iraq, and they renamed the post for my son. They asked me to be the auxiliary president, which I have been for the past 4 years, and I've loved it. 2016, I had cancer, okay? Not a big deal, I'm still breathing, but I had very invasive surgery, my neck and my spine. And so I have neuropathy on my right side. So I can't scoot across that street. And luckily, when we're having something, the gentleman from the boat lets us park there, and then we get to walk on the grass and so in the dark and slowly get. I am a senior citizen, but there's a lot of us, and I can't go across Candlewood Lake Road. It's too dangerous, you know, and this having more spaces would just make you calmer so that you feel safer, and I think that's an important thing. And I know people have already said how many, we meet 12 times every month, 12 times a year. That's it. That's it. I mean, we may have a fundraiser for a bake sale, but it's a drive-through. We don't, you know, we don't have any large parties. I mean, majority of people, except me, all work full-time. And then we have older retirees, but we're fortunate to be able to meet with the Post and with Sokol. We have a great relationship, and I just wanted to let you know that and take into consideration someday you will all be old. you know, and you made like safer walking. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
John Kennedy? Does it say John? Yeah. All right. Timothy Walsh?
Timothy Walsh, 16 Farview Road, Brookfield, Connecticut. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for the opportunity to speak. Brothers and sisters from Sokol, brothers and sisters from VFW, and Brookfield residents. My name is Tim Walsh. My wife Jill and I own 16 Farview Road in Brookfield. My family has owned a home in town for over 46 years. I and my children have all gone and graduated from Brookfield schools. My wife owns a private practice here in town. I work for a trucking company located in Brookfield, and I'm also a proud Teamster. I am an Army veteran of over 10 years. I fought in Baghdad, Iraq from 2004 to 2005, mostly with the 1st Cavalry Division, but we were also attached to many other distinguished units. My father fought in Korea with the 1st Marine Division and called Brookfield home for more than 40 years before moving to Long Island. We also owned property on Candlewood Lake for over 30 of those years. We are all very familiar with the area and try to frequent the businesses that are located on Candlewood Lake Road, as well as visit friends and use the town parks. Also, Sokol Lodge and VFW are located on Candlewood Lake Road, so we are up there often. All of us in this room know what happens on Candlewood Lake Road. The increase in homes that have been built on the lake, the increase of use at the town park and Cadigan Fields, the very successful businesses that are on Candlewood Lake Road in our neighborhood, and quite honestly, the cars and trucks are much bigger, faster, distracted drivers, there's more of them, and yes, there's a blind curve, if you will, coming up from Federal Road, out around towards Elbow Hill, past the Sokol Lodge and onto Candlewood Lake Road. Even back in the days of the early 70s and early 80s, my father would always tell us about the lake area's traffic issues. Coming up Mountain Road or Elbow Hill or Candlewood Lake Road itself, you had to be fully aware. Coming from Long Island, we weren't quite used to the small winding roads that a very small Brookfield in those days had back then. But in order to get to our property on the lake, we learned what our father had said and remembered what he had said. Today, same road, same awareness needed, and as a father myself and having taught 4 very good drivers myself, I find myself echoing my father's words. Except I emphasize that the speed at which things are happening now are much faster and much more dangerous, and the need for awareness is more important. I'm 5'9", 215 pounds, and at 56 years old, I am one of the younger members of the VFW. I'm still in decent enough shape to do the job that I have to do, which sometimes lasts over 12 hours. But I don't move like I used to, as my family and friends, and certainly my boss will attest to. With the present 13-car limit at the building, I have had to cross on foot Candlewood Lake Road if I was the 14th, 15th, 16th car.
If you could wrap it up, that'd be great.
Wrap it up?
Yeah, it's 3 minutes.
Oh, jeez. I'm so sorry. Forgive me. Forgive me. Okay, so I have a 70% disability from the military. I have a 70% disability. I am scared as hell to cross Candlewood Lake Road on foot. I would appreciate your consideration as to allowing those of us who are having difficulty. I appreciate your consideration. Very sorry that I talked over long.
Richard Olivier?
I'm gonna pass it.
Okay, thank you. Forgive me if I can't read this. I should have asked everybody to write illegibly. Brian?
I was going to say Brian Dodd.
Darky? Well, I can call, if I can't read them, I'll call, see who wants afterwards. Al Morey, or Murray? If you could say your name and your address.
My name is Alexander Maury. I live at North Navy Road in Danbury. I am a disabled veteran of the U.S. Navy and a member of Sokol Lodge 30. My home is in Danbury, 100 yards from Brookfield Town Line. 90% of my shopping is done in Brookfield at Kohl's, CVS at the bottom of White Turkey Road, BJ's, Costco's, ShopRite, and sometimes eating at the Red Colony Diner or Maggie McFly's. We also go to Brookfield Village for ice cream. My home church is Prince of Peace Church in Brookfield. My wife and I also attend St. Paul's Episcopal Church at Brookfield Center. I patronize these places because they are easily recognizable, are well lit, and have ample parking. I am sure people my age, some also with physical disabilities, are relieved to be able to park within a few steps of being inside of these places. My wife and I have been members of Sokol Lodge for over 60 years. We enjoy sitting on the back deck of Sokol Lodge overlooking beautiful Kenwood Lake, sometime enjoying the sunsets over the lake. At the end of this year, I will be 89 years old, and I am unable to walk across long distances. Sokol Lodge now has parking restrictions. I'm hoping Sokol will get a favorable result from the parking lot request so that my wife and I can again enjoy the sunsets from the back deck of Sokol Lodge. Thank you.
Jessica DeCosta?
Pass.
Oh, pass, okay, thank you. Idervan DeLosta? DeCosta, okay.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the board.
Your name and your address?
My name is Ider Van de Costa, and me and my wife live at 53 Elbow Hill Road. I'm probably one of the youngest members of the VFW and both Sokol. I am 90% disabled veteran. I walk to the club most days, and from where I live, you probably know where that is, right at the stop sign. It's probably even more dangerous than crossing the road at Kenwood Lake. So all I ask is please consider this, in the purview that we're asking you to, and that you consider the safety of all the veterans and the members of our community. Thank you.
Martha Massa, did you want to say? Okay. And Mitch O'Hara.
So my name is Mitch O'Hara. I'm the owner and operator of Candlewood East Marina for the last 41 years.
And address?
204 Candlewood Lake Road. So I'm the neighbor to the north of them. I'm not going to spend a lot of time tonight talking about the usage of the property or the overburdening of it or all that I've heard. I think no one's more qualified than myself after 41 years to speak in the behalf that is not as being overburdened, not being overabused, just not happening. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time speaking about what a great neighbor they are, the patriotism that we all should have for the VFW. I'm going to share a small story with you. Something I observed myself about 2 weeks ago. So I'm in the showroom, closing up around dusk. And I hear a car screeching, brakes, happens a lot on the Lake Road. We all know about the traffic. And I look out, and there was a car going a little slower as he's coming down the hill. And it looked like he was apparently trying to turn or looking for the VFW or the Sokol Club, I'm not sure. But a car behind him, as he was going slow, slid up behind him, locked his brakes, honked his horn, and that gentleman couldn't turn in. He continued to move forward and pulled into our parking lot at Candlewood East. Now, I've allowed him to park there, whether that's legal or not, I'm not sure. I've done it in the kindness to support them as they've gone through this issue. They'll usually ask ahead. I cannot always provide that parking. You guys in the neighborhood here know that oftentimes there is no parking. I'm a commercial business, we store boats there. But oftentimes they'll call, and when I have the ability, I will let them park there. But this evening, I did not get that call, and the gentleman who almost got rear-ended pulled into the marina. And as I looked out, I recognized this gentleman, an elderly man that I've seen before, and I'm almost certain he's a VFW member. I know he's at the Sokol Club. I've seen him before. He recognized me. So he got out of his car. It was about dusk. He didn't use the crosswalk that we had. to this lady's point, he started to walk south on the northbound lane on the grass. Now, oddly enough, that day, the neighbor to the south of the VFW was having his own gathering. More power to him. I have no disrespect for him at all. But he was having his own gathering and encouraging his guests to park across the street illegally. And I believe he was issued a cease and desist that day for that parking. But as this gentleman was walking up the road, a car was coming south, or excuse me, going north, and stopped. But he didn't stop for the gentleman to cross the street. He stopped so that he could back up into the parking, to jump the curb and back up into there. So as he stopped, the VFW member started to cross the street. He got about halfway across, but now, I'm going to finish here so you can turn that off. As he started to back up, his car was crossing the northbound lane. Another car at excessive rate of speed came up behind him, saw that he was blocking the road, and went to swerve around him to get by him. But the gentleman was almost across the street. His back was to him. He never saw it happen. He almost got hit right then and there. Now I ask you, when that day comes, and it will, it's just a matter of time, it's not going to fall on my shoulders for trying to help out. It's going to fall on this commission's shoulders and each one of you that sit at this table. And I can promise you one thing. That night, none of you are going to sleep very well, and neither am I. So I ask that you give this consideration to this club, to this VFW, to Sokol Club, the ability to park the additional cars that they need to before this happens. Thank you for your time tonight.
Is there anybody else who would like to speak in favor of this application? Yes, ma'am. State your name.
Yes. My name is Kathy Hollick. I live at 44 Blackbridge Road in Sandy Hook, Connecticut. Born and raised. My husband has been a Sokol Lodge member since birth, pretty much, if not birth, for 60 plus years. We got married there. A beautiful place to get married at, because he was a member. 1998 was the day we got married, year we got married. Last year, I wanted to renew our vows. It was special. I couldn't have my own parents there, because we want our children there, our grandson, and the justice of the peace. But we needed 13 cars. That was it. Do you know how sad that was? Not to have a special, special day relived to bless our 25 years. The limited amount. I wasn't going to have my parents cross the road. I wasn't going to have them get bussed up from Kohl's or whatever. Do you really think that's right? There isn't weddings there every weekend. There isn't parties there every weekend. I have more parties at my own house than this place does. Please consider. The Sokol Lodge has been there for longer than I've known them, and they are my family. And the VFW, my uncle, is the one who originally started the Brookfield one when it had no home. And this is how you treat these people because of one person. Think about it. One person.
Anybody else like to speak in favor of this application? And then after that.
I'll be very brief. My name is Al Smith. I live at 51 Tower Road, Brookfield, Connecticut. I've been a resident of Brookfield for 50 years. When I came back from Vietnam, I had a hearing disability. And I'll end with this. My wife has MS. She relies a lot on me as a caregiver. And I tell her about the danger of going across Candlewood Lake Road. And she said, what happens if you get hit and killed? I really didn't know what to tell her other than, sorry to say this, get a good lawyer because you got a hell of a negligence case against the town. We know the problem, the solution is simple, and I just ask you to implement that solution. Thank you.
If it's all right, can I speak from back here to?
No, there's a micro, there's a
I
microphone.
don't want to disturb my service though.
Oh,
We
can
have a
you get
hand mic?
microphone? We have a microphone. Yep, it's fine.
Good evening, my name is Michael Perrone, 209 Carmen Hill Road, number 2, New Milford, Connecticut, 06776. I'm the Senior Vice Commander of the Brookfield VFW, Chief of Staff for the state, and my wife is the Vice President of the Auxiliary, and I believe my son is the youngest Sokol member, if I'm not mistaken, at 15 months. And my wife and I are both also Sokol members. It's pretty simple. I got 3 deployments, VA disability rating, still actively in the Marine Corps, got 14 years in so far. And outside of the normal, I guess, left and right, you would say, of disabilities, of trying to see the signs and this and that, when it comes to VA ratings and disabilities, a lot of people in these rooms, they're not physical disabilities. All right, so we use the club as a place to go around like-minded people, relax, enjoy, decompress, come up with events for the town to give back, find our sense of purpose, and things of that nature. Typically, I'm usually the one running around the parking lot counting the cars. And I'll be honest, it infuriates me every time that I gotta do it. I was born, well, I was pretty much raised in this town from 2 years old on, went through all the Brookfield schools, and after my time in active duty, I saw firsthand what else is out there, and I decided to come back here. And to be going down this road for this many years, the solution's in front of you. So please consider it.
Anybody else who'd like to speak in favor? Yes, ma'am?
I'm Linda Olmasta from 43 Keeler Road, Bridgewater, Connecticut. I used to live in Brookfield for about 13 years, hon. Prior to that, on Praying Road. I had no intention of speaking. I didn't even know if I was coming to the meeting today. I'm not a member of the club. My husband is, of the Sokol Club, and my family that I married into has been members of the Sokol Club. Many of my nieces and nephews, family members, since they were born. I had my bridal shower there back in 1993. I'm speaking because I'm hearing what's being said here tonight, and I come from the field of insurance claims. For 37 years now, I've seen claims come across my desk, horrific car accidents. I've also been involved in loss control, risk management, and safety. And it's pretty common sense, eliminate the risk. That's the 101 rule in preventing serious accidents. And when these claims have come across my desk and I've had to deal with lawsuits, and I've also been involved with municipalities that I've insured and been a part of, it's horrible, it's life-changing. And I think the folks on both sides would feel horrible if somebody were to be killed or seriously injured crossing that street. It just seems to me common sense that you would do everything you can to eliminate that risk. The parking spaces many years ago, the rules have changed recently because of whatever has happened. And it just seems insane to me that you would do anything, or anybody would do anything to increase a risk for people. on a case like this, and it seems very unfair to me that a club that's existed for so many years and had no problems with the parking all of a sudden does now and has to deal with that. And I'm just here, like I said, I've seen too many, I insured town of Newtown, I've seen too many things happen in my life that it just seems obvious to eliminate risk whenever you can. Thank you.
Anybody else like to speak in favor? Sir? Yeah.
Hello, my name is Thomas Kennedy. I live on 63 Elbow Hill Road. I am 20 years old. I am also deaf. I have an implant on my right ear. I do have a hearing aid, but I do not use it. Throughout my life, I have walked on this hill going from my house on 63 to Kenwood. As I've heard before, if I heard correctly, you said it should not happen. It is not safe. I've had friends that have walked on with me, and they have never felt comfortable going on the road. When I was in freshman year, my whole group of friends would beg me not to walk down on the road because, as account with my father, my aunt is not here with us anymore because she passed away from a drunk driver. Please consider this, not only for our sake, the residentials, but people who are not residentials from this town. I brought friends here from Danbury, and they do not feel comfortable going near Candlewood Lake Road anywhere. Okay, thank you very much.
Anyone else? All right, seeing none. I'll now have people who oppose this application. Michael Leventhal?
I'm limited to 3 minutes.
Yes, because we have Mr. Vasurica's entire data he's submitted that we all have read.
Good evening. I think you know me. I've been here before. I was here last year. My name is Michael Leventhal. I'm an attorney. My address is 30 Huntington Street, Shelton, Connecticut 06484. I'll try to go as quickly as I can so I can stay within my 3 minutes. I will probably submit a letter if I'm cut off.
Oh, yes.
I represent Mark Vasurica. He owns the property abutting the subject property to its immediate south, 200 Candlewood Lake Road. I believe it's also called 198 Candlewood Lake Road by the tax assessor. Regarding this application, there's a lot of bluster in this application about the ADA. It is completely devoid of any citations to the U.S. Code and an explanation as to how the U.S. Code, which is where the ADA is housed, applies to zoning. That's the first thing. They're trying to scare you about some lawsuit about discrimination. Secondarily, Attorney Gomes is trying to tell you that the zoning laws and the statutes of the state of Connecticut don't apply. That is incorrect. Connecticut General Statute Section 8-3G1 relates to site plan. This is a site plan modification application. Obviously, it's an application to modify the site plan that was approved back in 1989 with the special permit that limited the parking to 13 parking spaces for the Sokol Club. The Sokol Club. Not additional entities that they've decided to bring on. The Sokol Club had the right to use it. But nevertheless, 8-3-G1 states, if a site plan application involves activity regulated pursuant to Connecticut General Statutes 22A36, then they must first make an application to the wetlands. And this property is impacted, involves Candlewood Lake, and even in their tab number 3, it shows that there's a 200-foot line of demarcation which cuts right through the front parking spaces. So query as to whether they had to file an inland wetlands application. They didn't, and if they didn't, then the application is defective. Okay, so let's start from there. In 1989, Sokol was granted the variance and special permit to operate a club on the site with special stipulations. And the commission was very concerned in maintaining that property as residential, and it remains residential to this day. They've made a big deal about the fact that they put 30 parking spaces in. Well, they did that when they were granted that variance and special permit in 2019 while the appeal was pending. Now, unfortunately, there's no automatic appellate stay in appeals from granting of variances. We appealed it, meaning Mr. Vasurka. Our appeal was sustained. They went ahead and put the spaces in, and now they're trying to tell us, well, we have 30 spaces, we can't use them. They did that at their own risk in 2019. And they did it with material that they now want to use again, and I'd like the commission to think about that. They want to use permeable material. And that's what they argued last year. Because it was permeable, they didn't have to take the 30 spaces out. And if for some reason you grant this and they use permeable material again, and they get up now to close to 49 spaces, even though I may prevail on appeal, they're going to argue they don't have to take the spaces out. So the spaces are going to remain there. So you've got to take that into consideration should you decide to grant this, okay?
So anything else you have, could you put in a letter? We'll keep the public hearing open.
Well, I would just like to wrap up and say, this application is nothing more than a pretext to try to get around the zoning regs and to get more parking spaces. And this has been going on for 10 years.
Point of order.
This has been going on for 10 years.
Over the time limit.
Yeah, I hear you.
Been going on for 10 years. Mr. Zimmerman, you said back in 2014.
Point of order.
It was a self-induced hardship.
Gentleman's over the time limit.
Timberite.
Okay.
Not Zimmerman.
Mr. Timmerman, I said that.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. I'll submit a letter, all right?
Yes.
Thank you.
Mark Vasurka? Mark? 3 minutes, Mark.
Mark Vasurka, 200 Candlewood Lake Road. I go home to my house, like all of you do. What I'm hearing here is, first of all, a tremendous amount of violations to the stipulations set forth back in 1988, 89 timeframe. This yellow piece of paper, you all have part of that paper in your books, clearly states 30 people, 13 cars, and 50 members. That's what was established back then in a meeting like this with people just like you who were looking to protect the town. They saw the future. We are now in the future. And the problem here is people are saying all this stuff. I'm the victim here. This town has been defiant in not stopping what was going on. 2014 we were here, and you said it was a self-induced hardship. It is even more. Just because they comply does not mean they can expand. If this is a problem for where they are, they need to go to VFW in Danbury, go to the town meetings where they have ADA capabilities, and this place needs to be shut down at this point. If this is the danger, why are they putting their members in danger? Now they're doing it? In 1988 to now they're doing it? In 1988, it was 13 guys playing cards. And this attorney here saying, oh, what does he know? No, she doesn't know that when 2019 came, even 2012, etc., it was coming in. I have pictures of every violation, and why isn't Tom Beecher doing something about it? That's the problem I have. And why does Mitch O'Hara have the Wounded Warriors and they do burnouts up and down the street 200 feet freaking long? You're worried about killing somebody? Stop burning out down the street.
Mitch, sit down.
This town's got it.
Move for a 5-minute.
You're out of line.
No more yelling.
He's out of line.
Thank you. No problem.
He's out of line.
No outbursts.
Yep.
He didn't outburst, he didn't say anything when everybody on the.
I wasn't out of
Right.
line either.
I don't like when people make all these stories up. I'm the victim here. The town should have enforced these stipulations. There are other alternatives to this, and they need to be looked at. Because I have hundreds of letters that's been sent to this town. Hundreds. And you know it, because a lot of people have gotten it. My life has been threatened. Sorry. My life has been threatened. I had the person arrested, and he said, get out of this town, you effing N-word. And he texted me at 3 o'clock in the morning saying he's outside my freaking house and your life is going to change from this point on. These are my neighbors that did that. I love a lot of these guys. My uncle is lieutenant colonel. My father, everyone was in the VFW also. I feel bad for everybody here. I don't like the fact that I have to be here because the town is negligent and just keeping it. It could have been a very nice place without the 70 cars and the 80 cars, because I have the pictures of them, yes. My property value went down as well. okay? And I can't sleep at night.
Quiet in the audience.
And just imagine you go home tonight and 10 o'clock at night, there's 50 freaking cars slamming their freaking door every Friday, every Saturday. That's what's going to happen in the future.
We have your packet, and I encourage everybody to read the materials they got. Thank you. Please, no talking or side conversations in the audience, or you'll have to leave. Mary Jean Morelli.
Hello. My name is Mary Jean Morelli, and I am a registered nurse, and I am also a business property and environmental health care consultant on that 50 Ted's Court in Cheshire, Connecticut. I met with the resident of 200 Candlewood Lake Road and conducted a forensic strategy session regarding this very issue that we're talking about here today. First, I want to thank the veterans that are here today. I am a former emergency room nurse. I want to thank you for your time and your service. My assessment and my recommendations were submitted to the board, so hopefully you got my packet and you read through that. And so in lieu of only 3 minutes of time, for the rest of the people in the room, I just want to address that my assessment primarily focused on the breach of the town's noise ordinance that takes place with these activities that they've mentioned that they've admitted to having. They stated 8 to 10, but we do have record of many more of that. The town's ordinance for noise during the daytime is 55 decibels, and the nighttime hours is 45. We've measured activity from social events next door at 202, in excess of 120 decibels, which, as you can imagine, is extremely loud. It's also in the Cove area of this area of Candlewood Lake, and in the summer hours, the noise actually is increased. During warmer air, it bounces off the sound, it actually echoes, so it makes it even much louder than it actually is measured at. I also addressed concerns related to the noise and visual annoyances, as we can see identified over at 202, and how they do negatively affect the impact of the property values, and also the potential to deter potential buyers as they drive over in that area and they can see some eyesores that are in the area. This, as you can imagine, has significantly affected the monetary risk. But today I'm focused on the original special permit and the stipulations that were granted by the board in 1989. It's my understanding that this board has upheld those stipulations, so I want to thank you for that thus far. But what I've identified is that 202 has actually outgrown the original intent of the stipulations, as evidenced by a lot of the conversations that's had here today. The stipulations did not include the VFW at that time. They've expanded on their activities since they were originally permitted back in '89. And the application for the 49 spaces clearly shows intent to increase the activity there and the noise and the decrease in the property values. In my opinion, based on the thorough assessment that I've submitted to this board, that I believe that it is time to revoke the special permit and return this property back to strictly residential. And I'm asking that you please protect the citizens of not only next door at 200, but the entire neighborhood, as evidenced by letters that they have submitted previously regarding the noise themselves. So you have the power to do so. I thank you for your consideration, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you. No conversations, please. Michael Waller, do I have that right? Is there anybody else who'd like to speak in opposition? No? Wow. I think we should.
Can I make a motion that we take a 5-minute recess, please?
Sure.
Move to take a 5-minute recess.
Second. Yeah, all right. We're taking a recess at 9:14. We'll be back at 9:19. Or 9:15, we'll be back at 9. Yeah. Plus. and you have your 10-minute rebuttal. The meeting is reconvened at 9:21.
We can't ask questions now.
May I begin, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, you may.
Okay, thank you. So what I'm going to do first, again for the record, Andre Gomes, counsel for the applicants. What I'm going to do is I just wanted to address a couple of items that came up during public comment. Attorney Leventhal commented that we needed wetlands approval, and I'm not speaking for Ms. Barkowski, who is not in the room right now, but we spoke with staff in advance, and if the commission takes a look at tab 4 of the application package, which has our proposed site improvements, the commission will see a dotted line reflecting the 200-foot upland review area. All of our work is proposed outside of the 200-foot upland review area. Therefore, no wetlands approval was required. Town staff agreed, which is why we moved forward just with this application without wetlands. Attorney Leventhal also commented that I didn't cite the U.S. Code. I cited a number of federal cases, including one, a federal Connecticut case. Those have abundance of U.S. Code provisions if the commission is interested. I'll also point the commission to Attorney Beecher's letter, which has a number of U.S. Code provisions, and all of the citations the commission needs to support the law on reasonable accommodations under the ADA. So I'll leave it at that. I will say this, and I'm not saying this tongue-in-cheek, I'm not meaning to be disrespectful, but Mr. Vasirka got up and talked about the violations and everything. One thing he did not deny was the fact that there was a shared parking arrangement for years where Mr. Vasirka happily used Sokol's property to park an abundance of cars, and it was only when that relationship broke down, unfortunately, that the complaints began. So, I do want to note there was a comment from Mr. Vasirka about being threatened, his life being threatened. I asked our client and my clients about that. That was not a Sokol member. That was not a VFW member. That was not a person that was affiliated with the applicants. So wanted to make that clear for the record. That is not an applicant threatening a neighbor.
And it's a police matter anyway.
Exactly. Ms. Morelli spoke. I will note first for the record, and I am certainly not pointing any fingers, but something happened with the portal. I spoke with Ms. Markowski during the break. I never received a copy of Ms. Morelli's report. I didn't receive a copy of, I see the commission has a package from Mr. Vasirka that has photos on it. I never received a copy of that. So Ms. Barkowski will be sending me copies tomorrow. I believe there was some type of technical issue with the portal, but I wanted to note that for the record. So I do reserve the right to respond to those items for the next meeting. I say this with respect. Ms. Morelli says she's an RN and an environmental health consultant, and in just 3 minutes she opined on property values without being a property appraiser. She opined on the noise ordinance without being an acoustical consultant. And she explained that the special permit should be revoked because there's clearly an intent to increase use here. We have stated repeatedly, and I will repeat again, there is no intent to increase the use here. We are trying to afford our existing members the opportunity to access services on site without these limitations, which is deterring and preventing them from doing so as a result of their disabilities. And certainly the commission knows you cannot revoke a special permit, it runs with the land. So with that, I will turn to my actual comments. My job now is to really tie this all together for the commission, and I understand the commission is going to be continuing this, but I do want to leave the commission with these thoughts. And I'm going to end where I began, which is the Americans with Disabilities Act. The Zoning Commission has a legal obligation to reasonably accommodate individuals with disabilities, and that includes modifying its zoning practices and regulations. The law is clear. Attorney Beecher, as the commission's counsel, confirms that in his memorandum. There's the test. In my letter, it was 4 elements. Attorney Beecher listed 3. They're all essentially the same at their heart. Number 1, is there a disability within the meaning of the ADA? I won't rehash what the commission heard here tonight, but we heard a lot, and there was a lot in the record about the disabilities of these members. 98% of the 50 active VFW members have disability ratings with the VA. 25% of Sokol members are disabled. 2 of the 24 auxiliary members are disabled. And again, it's enough for the applicant to provide disability evidence on a collective basis. Is the requested accommodation reasonable, meaning whether it imposes an undue burden on the commission or town? The applicants have the right, regardless of the ADA, to file an application with the Zoning Commission. They have that legal right, as any property owner does. So applying here does not unreasonably burden the commission, because we could be here for a zone change, for example. Also, it does not fundamentally alter the program. The site sits in a transitional area. The use is specially permitted on site. Much of the parking as requested is already constructed, and as I noted, we're not changing the use. We're just providing the facility to allow our members to access the site, providing equal opportunities to our disabled members. Moreover, Attorney Beecher notes in his memo, again, not speaking for him, he can certainly weigh in, but the cases generally conclude that reasonable accommodations do not fundamentally alter zoning. So that element is satisfied as well. And then finally, is the accommodation necessary? You heard a lot of testimony tonight. People who are literally walking away from VA representatives who are there to help them file claims because they are disabled, they cannot find parking, they cannot access the site, and they are too scared to cross Candlewood Lake Road. Members, those who risk crossing the road are taking their lives in their own hands, and this is a clear case of a reasonable accommodation. Failure to accommodate here is ensuring that these disabled members, many of whom served and sacrificed for our country, will continue to be shut out from Sokol and VFW events. It's not only shameful, but it's illegal. Before I conclude, Mr. Chairman, I do want to note that I'm very proud to be here on behalf of Sokol and the Brookfield VFW. I touch a land use application every day in one form or another, but my favorites are the ones that are mission-based, the ones that are tied to a community function or the preservation of a community service or need. I was amazed at the support received, almost 55 letters, if not over. I've never seen that in an application before in support. And I was saddened at the pleas I heard for assistance from members of the applicants here, folks who are just trying to come together as a community. Much of the reason that the applicants are here tonight yet again is due to the personal animosity and unfortunately the toxic relationship of one neighbor. I certainly do not speak for Mr. Vasirka. He is entitled to do so, and he had that opportunity through his counsel and consultant as well. But I cannot see how the proposed accommodations are something that could adversely impact his property. The use isn't changing, and I think it's extremely telling that the commission has letter from 3 other neighbors, Mr. O'Hara, the Emrose, and Mr. Giamarino, including testimony you heard from Mr. O'Hara tonight, that Sokol and the Brookfield VFW are good neighbors who support, and this is good neighbors supporting good neighbors, and they are not abusing their use of the site. In any event, the personal animosity of one person does not override the ADA or the Commission's obligation under the Act. I respectfully say it's time to put the past behind us and do what's right here. With that, Mr. Chairman, I'll ask if the Commission has any other questions. If not, I believe the Commission indicated its intent to continue the public hearing, correct?
Yep. Thank you. I'll take a motion to continue the public hearing to our next meeting.
Could we ask some questions?
Sure.
I would like to ask a question of Attorney Beecher and Ms. Barkowski, if I can, because we heard the comment, and we hear it in zoning often about the application being void over not having a wetlands. Can we address that issue, please? Please.
As far as we actually went over this when the application was originally submitted. I asked them to put the 200-foot line on there. Anything within 200 feet of Candlewood Lake is considered upland review area. Went out to the site myself. Anything in that 200-foot area, the upland review area itself is pre-existing conditions. Anything that they're requesting is above and beyond, which is what this application is about. I have no authority over the wetlands capacity. The line does go through a center of some of the parking spaces, but the parking spaces exist as they are today.
Attorney Leventhal is correct in terms of the law, which says that the wetlands application is required for a project. It must be, that application must be filed before or simultaneously with the zoning. But in this case, it deemed not to be necessary.
Got it. Thank you.
All right, any other questions from the commissioners before we continue? All right, I'll take a motion to continue the public hearing. We'll leave it open for the next meeting on September 12th. Anybody wants to make that motion?
I'll make a motion to continue 202 Candlewood Lake Road, Z, 24-38, Andrea Gomes Esquire for Danbury Sokolov Gymnastics Union Incorporated and Jason D. Lewis, Brookfield Memorial VFW Post 10201 Corp. Modification of a special permit, and keep the public or continuing the public hearing for next scheduled meeting.
All right, thank you, Tony. Second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion on continuing it?
I'm gonna vote against it because I think we could make a decision tonight, but I'm
We're leaving it open to gather more information.
Okay.
But, all right.
I'm gonna vote against the motion.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All against?
No.
Any abstentions? No, so it's 4-1-0 with Mr. Grimes against. All right. So,
I'm gonna motion to table 6B, which is the various changes
Okay.
to September 12th.
all right, that's fine. Does anybody want- Well, we'll open and close it.
Well, we are gonna.
Yeah, all right. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, thank you. Sean? All, well, usually we.
I'll motion to waive the reading of the legal notice till
Yep.
till September 12th.
All right. Okay, so second, Tony, all in favor? Aye. All right. So I'll take the application for the moratorium now.
Moratorium?
100
Moratorium.
Pocono Road, Z2443.
Go ahead.
I'm gonna keep your other one until I'm done with it.
Thank
If you
you.
folks keep quiet, we're still in session here.
Yeah.
You're older than me.
Where are we?
So we're doing the moratorium. I
We
just have-
are.
Yeah.
We are.
We have to open it, and whoever's here can talk, present the application. We can ask, they can ask questions, and then we will continue that one as well, because we're gonna keep that open for 2 meetings.
The moratorium is at 42 or 43?
That's 43.
Just so you're aware, the number of the people that were waiting outside because of this have left.
Yeah, I was told, but for everybody who's still here,
Yeah,
we'll
no,
get
I
it
agree.
started. We're keeping it open for one more meeting, so we're gonna keep it open anyway. Some people just couldn't make it tonight. I have to put it back together. Sorry. This is a regular meeting of the Brookfield Zoning Commission. At this point in our agenda, we have scheduled a public hearing concerning the application of Town of Brookfield Application Z-24-43 for regulation change and text amendments regarding moratorium on multifamily applications. I'll have the members introduce themselves, starting from my left.
Donicio Fontana, alternate.
Gwen Arment, regular member.
Anthony Papucci, Vice Chairman.
Kurt Timmerman, Chairman.
Sean Turner, Secretary.
Matt Grimes, member.
Greg Petriccioni, alternate.
Thank you. We opened this public hearing by calling on the Commission the Vice Chair to read the legal notice of this hearing. Oh, you already have it, okay.
This is a notice of the Brookfield Zoning Commission will hold a public hearing at Town Hall, 100 Pocono Road, room 133 at 7 p.m. on August 8th, 2024 for the application of 100 Pocono Road, Z-24-43, Town of Brookfield application for regulation change in text amendment regarding the moratorium on multifamily applications. At this hearing, interested persons may appear and be heard or written communications received. Files will be available for inspection at Town Hall. Kurt Timmerman, Chairman.
Thank you. All right, this application was formally received by the Commission on July 11th, 2024. This public hearing is only one aspect of the approval process and is for the purposes of accepting factual information and data bearing on this application and to allow expression of opinion of it by interested parties. Subsequent to this hearing, the Commission has 65 days in which to render a decision on this proposal. Final decision may be in the form of approved as submitted, approved with stipulations, or denied. After reading into the record the correspondence received by the Commission relative to this application, we will ask the applicant to present the application in detail, which is the Commission. The presentation will be limited to 45 minutes, but it's not going to take that long. The Chair will then entertain questions of clarification concerning the applicant's presentation from both the Commission and then the audience. We will hear from those then who wish to speak in favor of the application, followed by those who are opposed. Comments must be limited to 3 minutes. Members of the public will have one opportunity to speak during the segment of the hearing and may also submit their concerns in writing during the public hearing. During this segment of the commissioners may ask additional questions. The bylaws of the commission only allow for the presentation of similar positions in succession and preclude the intermixture of comments pro or con. All questions and comments must be directed through the chair. As you are recognized, please state your name and address so your comments may be legally recorded. Please be assured that everyone will be given the opportunity to speak. However, the commission is most interested in hearing factual information relative to the application. And in view of the time constraints placed upon us, we ask your indulgence in not reiterating comments previously presented. After the public comments are received, the applicant will have the opportunity to comment, and the time will be limited to 10 minutes. Any questions on?
Point of order, does the 65 days apply because it's our
Oh,
application?
he's correct. Since the commission has brought it to ourselves, we take as long as we need. There is no deadline. We will now ask the vice chair to proceed with reading some of the correspondence. The rest of the correspondence is up on the website, and also you can go to the land use office and inspect its files if you so choose. I have to say, most of the, you can read that one. Most of the are for the.
Correct. So this is from Louis, I'm going to butcher his last name, Manoli, to the land use. I'm a resident of Brookfield, and I wish to comment on the proposed moratorium on multifamily housing. There are a number of new apartments, townhouses already built, and more are under construction in Brookfield. It is true that the increased population will require municipal services, including fire, EMS, police, and schools, as well as concerns over water supply, sewer capacity, and traffic congestion. These negatives have already been expressed, but hasn't been addressed.
What hasn't?
But what hasn't been addressed is the negatives that have already been expressed. Oh, wait, I lost myself.
But what hasn't is?
The dwindling amount of open space in Brookfield. We have taken away much of the habitat that is needed and have disrupted the corridors needed for the movement of wildlife. For all above reasons, including the environmental aspects, I support the moratorium on the multifamily housing until the current construction of new housing is complete and the dwelling units have been filled. Only then will we be able to assess the burden that has been placed on our community services by the housing spree that we have experienced over the past few years. Much of the same goes for the commercial space that is standing empty while more space is being developed. Too much, too fast. We need to take a breather, step back, and assess the consequences of continued construction. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. I will now present the application for the commission. As we say, it's application Z-24-43. The current section numbers that will be affected in our regs is 4.4L is an addition of the moratorium. So, and we'll go through the verbiage in a second. The rationale for the requested change is to allow the zoning commission to pause and assess the current regulations and their impact on town infrastructure in the opinion that development is outpacing the town's sewer capacity, water capacity, school population, emergency services, including police, fire, and ambulance. And also the update of the plan and conservation plan of conservation development, which is currently being developed by the Planning Commission, and bullet points how well the current POCD was supported in terms of development and application of the current regs, the town's residents' opinion on development going forward, which is part of the POCD process, and any new regs to reflect the revised POCD. The verbiage for the change in the regs, 4.4L, state multifamily development moratorium. With the below, that was the section number. The verbiage is the Brookfield Zoning Commission shall not accept or consider any application for multifamily developments in the TCD, CGN, which is Commercial Gateway North, and CGS, Commercial Gateway South districts, commencing from the effective date of, and is left blank, The moratorium is to allow the zoning commission to pause to assess the current regulations and the impact on town infrastructure and our opinion on sewer capacity, water, school, emergency services, and the updated plan and conservation development, which is currently being developed by the planning commission. The expiration date of said moratorium will be, and the date's left blank. So we haven't set a period, how long this will be. That will be based on feedback we get and deliberations. So that is the moratorium verbiage. And does the commission have any questions of clarification on the language that's been proposed thus far? So no, so is there any questions of clarification from the audience? I know we didn't have a sheet for that. We just have, so yes, sir, if you go up and please state your name and address.
Will Meikle, 58 Tower Road. Just a point of clarification. What are the community gateway north and south?
So the community gate north is just north of TCD. From the north end is where Newberry Village is.
Okay.
And north to the to the town line. Okay. And south is like from exit 12, where Super 7 comes in, and just south to Echo Bay. Is that about right?
Elbow Hill Road, right?
Okay.
Yeah, around Elbow Hill Road.
Thank you.
Yeah, those are them. So, any other questions of clarification? You get to go next, Greg.
Phil Rothstein, 4 Arapahoe Road. Are there currently applications or projects or proposals in process or under consideration that would be affected?
Well, if someone gets an application before the regs change, it can go forward. It's only after the reg change, the applications could not. But as far as I know, we don't have any new applications. Only the land use office could say that, but. Oh, we received one.
Timing is everything. Thank you.
That's it? That's the one.
You know, most of them have been, like the ones you see going up have been approved some time ago, and they're finally actually getting done. So Greg, if you have a question? A clarification?
So Greg Dembowski, I have 7 questions.
Okay.
And I would like to finish by making a comment after, if I can, after my 7 questions. First question, your zoning regs don't define multifamily. They define multiple dwelling and 2-family dwelling. So I think you should clearly state what multifamily means in your definitions.
Okay.
Because I don't think that definition exists. That's more of a statement than a question, but.
Oh, Greg, could you state your position with the town?
Oh, sorry. I'm the Economic Development Manager for the town of Brookfield.
Okay, thank you.
So that's my first question. Please
That's
define multifamily.
That's a good question because looking through, you're right, and we're going to have, when we fix up the language, we'll make sure that multifamily, multi-unit are, the definitions are equivalent. Because right now, you're absolutely right.
Right. Good. Thank you. My second question is, what other zones allow currently multifamily housing? Other than the 3, which other zones?
C1 and C2, which are the lower zones, commercial zones on Federal Road.
Okay. Thank you. You'll understand why I asked that question as I go through these other comments. My next question is, have you analyzed the impact of this change?
We are aware of like sewer impacts, based on some, the sewer moratorium being lifted, and so we're concerned with that.
Mm-hmm.
And some EMS. I've read the emergency report that you put out, emergency services, I'm sure the rest of the commission has gotten a copy of them, and we can look it over again. But if you've got some more information about that, it'd be helpful.
Well, I do, and I've got a few things I'd like to read, but I don't have to tonight. All I would ask you do is read the last 2 annual economic development reports that I issued.
Okay.
Because that talks a lot about housing that has been built, housing that's planned to be built. It talks about if they're 1 or 2 bedroom, how much of it is affordable, and a lot of statistics that'll help really paint the picture about not just what has been done, but what is coming and what is planned to come. Okay. If you'd like, I've got about 5 or 6 bullets, but I won't read them tonight. It's late,
Yeah.
But I'm happy to come back and do that if you have questions or want me to hit the highlights on those two lengthy reports. So I'm not going
Just so you know, we are keeping this public hearing open through the next meeting too.
Yep.
Because some people had to leave too.
Yeah. So I'm not going to go through these 5 or 6 bullets, but I encourage you to read those reports because I talk about population growth. I talk about housing units built since 2016, really the beginning of the revitalization plan with the new POCD coming up on 10 years ago. So in a lot that has impacted all of the services that you referenced.
Yeah.
And I'll just mention, even though there's an affordable housing moratorium, and it has been in place now for 6 years, there are 46 830G housing units approved, of which 34 are under construction. They got approved before the moratorium. So I think it's important to understand, even with this moratorium, if it goes forward, there is going to be 235 multifamily housing units built because they're currently approved and our construction has either started or will start soon. Yeah. And again, I won't go through any more demographics, but I think it's important to get that perspective on why the town has grown, and I'll give you another couple quick examples. Brookfield, the average age in Brookfield went from 45 years old to 47 years old, the median age over the past 4 or 5 years. We are an old, compared to the state, we are an older town, and we're getting older at a faster rate than the rest of the state. Okay, so that's just something to keep in mind. That's enough on statistics. I've got the data, I don't want to go through it here. My next question, your application listed several rationale for justification. I absolutely agree and understand the impacts on water, sewer, fire, EMS, and other municipal services. But why did you make the comment that development is outpacing school population?
It's mainly because comments and concerns we have from applications that have come before us from the public. You know, usually the public has a chance to speak at some of these things. So do you have information regarding, you know, how the actual school population?
I do, and I'd like this to be in the record because I think it's important to be factual.
Yeah.
And this is information from the Board of Education, not from me, from their statistics and data you can get from their reports.
Yeah.
So public school enrollment was 2,680 students in 2015.
Yep.
And 2,597 students in October of 23. That's a decrease of 83.
Last number, what was the last number?
I'm sorry, 2,597 in October of 2023. So that's a decrease of 83 students over the past 3 years. In 2011, the population was 2,837, 250 more than it is today. So I just think, to be factual, many of the new apartments mostly are 1 and 2 bedroom, and our school population is declining, and we're getting to be an older population. Just something to keep in mind as you deliberate.
Okay.
Okay. My next question, number 5. Prior to submitting this application, did your commission consider other options to achieve the same or perhaps a more permanent impact?
No, but because the POCD is being done right now, and we know they're doing a survey and everything, which is up on the, by the way, on the website under the Planning Commission's tab. If you will, please go on there and do the survey. That we want to gather that data, and so that's the avenue, because we take that, the POCD, and then craft new regulations. And if we find that, you know, the permanent zoning reg changes that you're talking about, that's the vehicle through which it will happen.
Okay, because I do have a few suggestions there for that POCD group to consider.
Okay.
Are you aware of key milestones that are relevant to the duration of this moratorium that you should probably consider during your deliberations? There are several key milestone events that I'd like to mention if you're not aware of them.
For 830G?
The first one, the current 830G moratorium expires on October 6th, 2026.
Okay.
I will tell you that we have been given notice by the Department of Housing that that moratorium is being challenged, and it may be rescinded They gave us that notice about a year ago or so, and I think it's in the courts. Not specifically against Brookfield, but moratoriums and how they're calculated in general. So I just want you to be aware of our affordable housing moratorium and where it stands. Secondly,
When does it expire?
pardon me, October 6, 2026. The second important date to know is when our POCD is required to be updated by the state. That date is October 16th, 2026.
March 16th, you mean?
I'm sorry, March 16th, 2026. The town just hired a consultant. That work is starting very soon, and it's going to be a year and a half worth of work. And there'll be a lot of opportunity for the public and every board and commission and every department to comment on that. And that's a very worthwhile activity.
We will be having a joint meeting with them at some point.
Oh, yes, more than one. The last thing I'd like to mention is about WPCA. Is Nelson Malwitz here? He's there. I just want to mention, it's my floor, that I think it's really helpful, and I commend them for what they now publish on their website. I encourage you to go to the WPCA website, click on the button that says flows, sewer flows, actual flows, and they have a calculation. It shows what their actual flows are, it shows their anticipated flows from planned developments, and it shows their estimated remaining capacity. And I'll talk about why that's important when I get to my closing comment here in a second. And my last comment is, and I think I've already asked it, I really encourage you, and if you haven't, please read my last 2 annual economic development reports that talk about all of the housing information and demographic shifts in detail.
Okay.
If I can, a closing comment?
Yeah.
Okay, the bottom line, in my opinion, even with this moratorium, housing, retail, commercial, and professional office development will continue for at least the next 2 years because of what's already approved and what's coming down the pipeline. Yeah. After that, development may slow or multi-housing development shift to a different zone if this moratorium is written, goes in effect as written. Something to consider. If there is a demand for housing development, the developers will find a way to fill that demand. So I would think if you want to achieve the full objective, think about what you've written and think about what this moratorium should do. By early 2026, there'll be a new POCD that will shed some light on the community's priorities for the next 10 years. There will be, at that time, maybe in a couple years, there will be very little sewer capacity remaining. This is a known fact by the WPCA, and it's a matter they're currently addressing. Basically, what I'm saying is, for the next 2 years, development's coming. It's already under construction. We may run out of sewer capacity before this thing, if it goes in force, really has much of an impact. The POCD and public input over the next 18 months is really, really critical. So those are my comments.
Oh, I have one question of you. What's your opinion on how long the moratorium should be, or what the expiration date should be?
So I've heard some say an arbitrary date of 1 year. That's not long enough. If it goes in effect and you want to have an impact, I think it should be written different than it's proposed. Let me just say that. If you want to achieve the objectives you stated, and I think 1 year is not long enough.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or clarification?
So what happens if we run out of sewer capacity?
That's their moratorium. I have a question of clarification for you, Mr. Malwitz. What she said, asked.
Yeah. No, let me just summarize the sewer situation, because we've run out of capacity at some
Oh,
point.
can you state your name and title and?
Yeah, the name is Nelson Malwitz, and I'm chairman of the sewer commission, which is an appointed position.
Mhm.
Don't elect me, you can fire me, it's okay. It's a volunteer. So anyway, what happened was we were limited in the sewer flow that we could send to Danbury by contract to 380,000 gallons a day. And we were able to increase that to, we were gonna run out, flat run out. And we were able to increase it to 200,000 gallons a day after some, by 200, so it's a 580 is a total. And so we're monitoring it very closely as to, so the original moratorium put a limit as to how much flow could be per acre or per property. It was 2,000 gallons per property or 400 gallons per day per acre, which was quite limiting. And so we put together a construct called total future flow. And what that is, that's our current flow today, as a past 3-month average, plus anything that we've approved is in what the future flow is. And then we're looking on the horizon at a few more things that are coming but not approved. They haven't gone through the cycle yet. And basically, there's only, that includes things like 777 Federal Road and a bunch of others that are in the gauntlet but were not approved yet. But if all those that were in cycle were approved, we're only left with the maximum of about 170 units of anything. And now what happens is when you run out of water, you can reduce the pressure to hopefully stem the flow. You run out of electricity, at capacity, you can reduce the voltage. You can't do anything with a sewer. You just have to take it. And we're contractually limited now. What happened with Danbury? Danbury is a regional waste treatment plant. And so they're governed by the state and the contracts that we have. And so we're obligated not to send anymore. So what we're monitoring is when we hit 90%, 90% is at 90%, when you hit a waste treatment plant hits 90%, you have to plan for the future. And so when we hit on the horizon 90%, then we have to put the moratorium back in place with those severe limits of so much per acre and per, so much per property. Anyway, so what's happened is that we were the bad guys, which is okay, but without it turns out that courts have held that the WPCA can't play the role of a zoning commission. We must give capacity away on a first come, first served basis. So we can't decide commercial or multiple housing or individual housing. We just have to take them per. What in fact happens is if you allow, if all multiple family housings are allowed or high use, high density occupation is allowed, then it stops commercial development, which is what helps pay the taxes and floats the bill. So, but that's going to be a zoning commission issue, not a WPCA issue. So we're a little bit hamstrung. Since we can't go in the zoning arena, and
that's why we're here to help.
Yeah. Okay. So if you're able to now, basically.
So you're going to run up and hit your 90%. You think in the?
We're going to hit it pretty soon. In fact, if you deliberate too long, we might beat you.
Yeah. I mean, it's possible. You know, we foresee it's possible that your moratorium will stop development of all development, not just what we're proposing.
But if you were able to propose it, then it would potentially allow.
It would help you.
Commercial development, and usually you put a warehouse in or something, and then it doesn't take a lot of water, sewer, so it's helpful, but helps the taxes, and so it's up to you in that case.
Right. I wanted to get to the other people, so if you want to wrap up your comments.
Yeah. Okay. So basically, that's it. We set up the. We're really relying on you to take the front on the thing in order to. And on your question of how long should it be, now the cycle of sewer flow and development, it has to be at least 3 years before everything is built, and before you know what you have. And if we have any additional capacity, what happens is the state says this is how much sewer flow you should expect, and by the Department public health, but they're always very high. So the actual flows are less. So, but we won't know for 3 years as to what the actual flow is until it's all built and it's flowing and whatever. Then we'll know what we have left to offer.
Okay, thank you, Nelson. All right, is there any other questions or clarification?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So we're expecting a couple hundred at least new units coming in.
That
the
are
next-
already in the pipeline.
Yeah, that are.
235.
Okay,
200.
Already built,
235.
We're soon to start construction.
So are we gonna be able to handle that? I mean. are they-
Anybody who's
Yes.
already got theirs.
Oh, you already,
Yeah, we're, that's part of the future flow. We're looking at that,
Yeah.
calculating it, but then, but there's not much future flow left if we build
Beyond
any
that.
more housing.
Yeah.
So
But-
Planters will be able to handle what we have.
does it depend on how many people are in each unit?
No.
You have calculations for
No.
that, right?
No, what happens is that it's, whether it's 1, 2, or 3 bedroom, our experience has been about 110 gallons a day per unit. So we just take a global number, 125 gallons per day per unit is about half of what the state says it ought to be when you calculate pipes, and they do it for other reasons. So that's our number, 125. But we won't know the actual until it's built 3 years from now or whatever.
Flushing.
Right. Nelson, a question for you, as far as the 90% capacity. Danbury, because it's the regional area,
Yeah.
Danbury is also the one that spent the 115 or 118 million to build the new facility that they have now.
Yeah.
If we're at 90%, that one's at
110?
capacity, servicing the area, again, it's regional, so that's picking up Brookfield, Danbury, I'm assuming part of Bethel and
Yes.
other areas as well.
Yeah.
What's the next build out? Would Danbury be building out again, or would other towns, again, I understand the 3-year build out, but again, is that actually factored into the calculation, or is it 3 years for build out
No, 3 years.
plus?
Yeah, 3 years to assess what we have now, living with our current limits. If, let's see, Danbury is doing better, their plan is doing better than they anticipated, so they may be able to increase the nameplate capacity of the plant, and they perhaps could give us more if they're so willing, but Danbury has also got their own challenges.
Exactly.
And they're in denial, so once they have the.
Right.
So then there's a possibility we could do our own, but what happens is, there's a Department of Energy and Environmental Protection, and so we're dealing with them, and I heard a lecture by Katie Dykes, was there and she's in charge of both, but her focus is totally on energy. The environmentalists, she delegates that to other people, and they have trouble taking the decision. So we're in a little bit between a rock and a hard place in terms of getting focused to put. So if Brookfield wanted to put their own waste treatment plant in, we could. There's certain sections where it could go, but we're dealing with a bureaucracy of the state that's a huge challenge, and they all tell me, Nelson, it'll never happen. So I don't know. Anyway, the Danbury thing is the best option, and we could go to New Milford, but the cost is really high. So
The cost is gonna be high either way, that's why I was asking. Or would New Milford, and again, that was my second part of this, would New Milford have capacity, or would it be a blended part of New Milford and part of
yeah,
Danbury,
it would be
depending on?
blended, I would think,
Okay.
and we'd have to pony up. We're gonna owe, for the improvement in Danbury, we're gonna owe about $5 million. Well, the WPCA doesn't, you pull out, we don't have that. So we have to charge our users in order to pay for that.
Right.
And in addition, for the extra $200,000, they want $200,000, another just, okay, ching. So, but that's, we're doing that in order to sponsor Brookfield.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. So right now, I'll list to comments supporting. Andy Ellis, you're up.
I'm going to yield my time to him.
Okay.
I shouldn't need too much. Andy Ellis, I'm the fire chief in Brookfield. We support this moratorium. Several years ago, at several meetings, Board of Finance, Board of Selectmen, zoning meetings,
we kind of watched what was going on and the growth in the town,
Yep.
and kind of anticipated how it was going to impact public safety. And here we are. In the last 18 months, the fire and ambulance services responded to 4,390 calls. That's between January 1st, 2023 to July 1st, 2024. 4,390 calls in 18 months for the fire department and ambulance. Right? 705 of those were in multifamily responses, buildings that you're discussing about your moratorium. You have a list right there. 705. That is a large increase for us. That has impacted the cost of running our emergency medical services. We've just ordered a 4th ambulance, so we have a spare. 2 weeks ago on a Thursday, we responded to 22 emergency incidents in 24 hours. 3 times all the ambulances were tied up and on calls. The majority of our responses that day were to multi-unit, multi-family apartment buildings, etc. We have 3 apartment buildings on Laurel Hill Road that came in, I believe, under 830G, that do not have elevators. So every time there's an ambulance call on the 2nd or 3rd floor, the fire department has to go with the ambulance and carry the people down the stairs. Okay? We've had a profound effect on our ability to deliver safe fire services. We've had to change equipment, buy different equipment, a 2nd ladder truck. There's one that's going up right now north of the Four Corners that's 4 stories tall. We don't have ground ladders that can reach that. We did come to an arrangement with the builder. They have an access way for our ladder truck to go around the back. I'm hoping it's not snowing and we can get back there if there's a problem. We have seen a huge demand on our 100% volunteer fire department. When I started 34 years ago, we would go to about 200 calls a year. We're going to probably do 1,200 fire calls this year. The ambulance is going to do close to 2,900 to 3,000 calls projected the way it's going right now. We would probably do 400 ambulance calls 34 years ago. Less than one, maybe one a day. Okay, we have a fully staffed ambulance service now that they work for the fire company, and we've had to increase our hours. We started out with just 20 years ago, we had some day coverage, then we added paramedics, then we went 24 hours a day with a paramedic. Now we have 1 ambulance 24 hours a day fully staffed, 2nd one 12 hours a day, and at the other 12 hours at night, 7 p.m. to 7 a.m., are staffed by a volunteer and an on-call paramedic. Okay, all driven by call volume. And if you look at our responses, I'm not going to Mrs. Smith's house or Mrs. Jones' house that much. I'm going to commercial buildings, multifamily units, all right, industry, mostly multifamily buildings. That new building that's at the foot of Laurel Hill Road, South and Federal, like it's 731 Federal, I believe it is.
Where the food
Where
emporium.
the food emporium's going. We've already been there half a dozen times. It's not even open. Okay, gas leaks, fire alarms. Okay, all of these buildings bring problems for us. Okay, I'll put on my other hat. I'm an assistant fire chief in the city of Bridgeport, where I've worked for 27 years. So I know what it's like, and I know what these buildings bring for us. That's why we were able to kind of voice our concerns about 10 years ago, mostly on deaf ears because they thought we were crazy. We're holding it together at the fire department with about 80 volunteers between both fire companies, but the demands for calls are going up. If we are no longer able to do this, continue to staff fully volunteer fire department, it's going to cost close to $5 million a year on our already strapped town budget. There's 80 people in town preventing that from happening. All right, and this moratorium would greatly help us continue to be able to do that. All right, we do our best. We try to stay up on trends. We have a really, really well-trained and disciplined fire company, both of them. But chronic alarms to these buildings are becoming they're problematic. All right, smells and bells we call it, and people smell gas. Well, there's 40 or 50 gas meters in the back of an apartment building, and they're not all tight, and they're going to leak, and things happen. We get called. All right, somebody's toilet overflows on the 3rd floor into the 2nd floor through a light fixture. We get called. All right, fire alarms get pulled. People burn food. All right, think about how many times you burn food at your house. Now put 80 or 90 or 100 people or 100 families in 2 acres, and imagine how many times they're going to burn their food and call the fire department. It happens all the time. All right, and we don't mind. That's our job. We go to calls. We're taking care of business. But the demand that's been placed on us over the last 10 years, last 5 years in particular. You can see it in our call numbers. Read the EMS report and the study that was done. All right, we're trying to stay up on this, but I get concerned every time that I see a shovel going in the ground, all right, because it's going to be a demand on us. And our people are amazing; they do amazing things and go to a lot of calls. But I don't know what my breaking point is with our people. I don't know when I'm going to have to come to town hall and knock on the first selectman's door and say, we've got a problem. We're going to have to hire some people, all right? And you don't just hire one, you hire a bunch. And that's going to be a huge financial impact. And the ramifications for that, for this town would be, would put us in major debt, in my opinion. And I don't want to get there. But this moratorium, we are 100% behind. And anything we can do to help you guys support this, give you documentation, have conversations with us, I encourage you to go ride with the ambulance or come with me in the chief's car and go to a call. Go to these buildings, go to a call, see what happens, see what it's like. All right, we need to slow this down. All right, it's really helping us. Our water system, in my opinion, isn't what it's cracked up to be. All right, when we have a major fire, we had major fires before, and we overtaxed the hydrant system, and we still rely on tankers. All right, and that was sold to us years ago. Oh, it'll be the greatest thing since sliced bread. It's truly not. So I have, major concerns with that. I have life safety concerns with the people that live in these buildings. All right, they are sprinklered, most of them, and they have fire protection systems, but it's not always fire that kills people, it's smoke. All right, so there's been major fires in apartment buildings like that. And their construction, the way they're constructed nowadays, they fail quickly under flame impingement. So those are also concerns of mine. So this moratorium is going to help this town. It'll help emergency medical services and the fire department. It'll slow the cost of running the operations down too, because our call volume will level off or plateau. I've been waiting for a plateau on our calls for 5 years. It hasn't happened. It just keeps increasing. And pretty soon we're going to have to increase our emergency medical services staffing, the hours, to a full second ambulance full time. That's very costly, and that's at the cost of all the taxpayers in this town. So we support this moratorium, and again, if there's anything we can do, we're here. We're going to be here at your meetings. If you have questions, if you need clarification, if you want to ride out with us and go to these places, please do. The other issue, I have one more issue with that, is the fire marshal's office. Okay, they are understaffed for the amount of, I know they're doing a study right now trying to figure out man hours to inspect all the buildings they have. Every time we add every one of those needs to be inspected every year. Okay, there's 2 guys working full time, and it's not enough. So those are costs there's real costs to that, and those things need to be inspected. So those are all things that I think that we need to keep in mind when we're doing this moratorium.
I appreciate the data because.
When you're done, I thought you were gonna go first.
Oh, yeah, this data is good because the planning commission wants us to be data driven when it comes to reasons for this.
We have plenty of that, and we can get you into our computer, and we can take type of calls, time of day, locations. We can do all of that for you pretty quickly.
I have a question.
Not to put Chief Ellis on the spot, but maybe not tonight, but have a recommendation as to how long the moratorium should be in effect. We would like the fire department's input on that. Mr. Dubowski suggested a year was not long.
I don't think the builders would like my answer. I'm born and raised here. I'd like it to stop forever, but I know that's not realistic.
The state won't like it either.
Yeah.
And condolences on the passing of Chief Lane.
Thank you. Appreciate it. You have a question?
Yes. Do you ever foresee having to make a choice of what call to answer?
What do you mean, like having numerous
Like,
calls?
yes.
We're very good at triaging incidents. Like when we have a big storm or we have something going on, whether it's the fire department or the ambulance, we have a process that we triage the calls. If we have a building fire that comes in, we go to that ahead of an alarm. We still send somebody to the alarm. It may take a couple of minutes, but the first priority would be to the active call. Same thing for medical calls. If we have 2 or 3 medical calls in a row real quick, the dispatchers, in conjunction with the paramedic, are able to triage the calls and figure out where the first resource goes to based on need. If we have someone with a stub toe and someone's in cardiac arrest, we're able to pull the ambulance off the stub toe before they get there, send them to the cardiac arrest, and then redivert the other ambulance there. There's a pretty good system in place for that. And we have had to use it, in the past. Luckily, we have an amazing system here between the police department, the fire department, the ambulance, and our volunteers. We get people out and we get the calls covered. My concern is that the added burden is just going to keep adding. We're adding a 4th ambulance at a cost of $600,000. We buy an ambulance every 3 years. okay? They last 12 years, and then they're gone. That's $600,000 today's price, you know, equipped and ready to roll out the door, and we get 12 years out of it. So that's a huge cost, where we used to only have two, you know, 10, 12 years ago.
One more question. Oops, sorry. Go ahead, Dan.
Just a quick question, and you might not know the answer. I don't. That's the reason why I'm asking. You referenced Laurel Hill not having elevators.
Correct.
With all the build-outs that we've had in some of the bigger places, I know Barnbeck has elevators.
Yes.
How many of the new buildings or newish buildings don't have elevators?
Right now, to my knowledge, the only one is Laurel Hill. That's snuck through.
And those were the first ones that.
Correct.
So you had come to us about
Correct.
having stretcher elevators, and so.
Correct.
We
Change
asked
your regs.
developers-
Right.
The elevators actually have to
That's
come
why I
to
was-
stretchers.
that's
Yeah.
why I was asking. I was
Yeah.
trying to work
The problem
backwards
is
to-
they are there.
Yeah.
And,
Oh, no, it
and
doesn't-
they are one of the top places that we go in town, for both the fire department and the ambulance.
Sure.
And it's unfortunate, you know, that it snuck through. Again, it was under 830G, and there was a whole lot of other things. They were built off-site. There was a third-party inspection of them. They were put modularly,
Yep.
so we couldn't even really get in and look at them. It was a whole thing that happened with those buildings.
Right. And like I said, I know those were the first ones that
Correct.
went up in the area. That's why I was asking.
Correct.
Okay.
And Chief, you could illustrate for us, it was not one of the newer developments, but back in March, you guys had to deal with a pretty horrific situation at one of the older.
Yep.
Can you give us an idea of what a strain like that is on our 80 volunteers?
Oh, that was a huge strain. I happened to be at work that night, so I was listening to it. Chief Fry was in charge with Chief Brockmeyer. When I got there in the morning, I could tell you that, you know, people call out of work the next day. You know, we were there for hours, obviously. It's part of the deal. It's what we do, all right? It was, we were lucky that we had the police department and our ambulance around the corner. They got there fast, got everybody out of there. That fire moved fast. There are many buildings like that in town that don't have fire protection, adequate fire protection. They're older, the condominium complexes in particular, and it's manpower intensive. We had units all the way from Trumbull up to Northville.
Yeah.
Yeah, Northville to Trumbull that were here helping us, and you know that's a regional thing. We all kind of help each other out. We do that. We were in Reading the other day. We've been all over the state. It's part of the deal, but it is. You know, when I started as a fireman, I'm a second generation fire chief here. I grew up in the firehouse. When I used to go to calls with my dad, it was at Mr. Smith's house and Mrs. Jones' house, and it was a one-story ranch or a cape or a colonial, and we'd be able to stretch the hose in, and fire out, and be out of there. And now we're going into these apartment buildings and huge commercial buildings. It's totally changed the way we had to do things in my time on the department. And Brookfield is not the little town it used to be. And again, we have millions of dollars of fire apparatus next door by need. You know, people are like, oh, how can we need all that stuff? Well, half the town has no water, so we have to bring it with us, all right?
We used it all that night.
Yeah, right, all the night. And, you know, when you put 80, 100, 150, 200 people in a building, all right, and something goes bad, we have to get them out quick, all right? So that's why we have 2 aerial trucks right now. We have ground ladders that are shoved in them. You know, we have a ton of ground ladders that we carry that we have to throw out on the back because we have to get around all 4 sides of the building. And accessibility issues become a huge issue for us. You know, it looks great when you can pull up front, but if the people are hanging out the back, I can't use the ladder if I can't get back there. 800 Federal Road is a fine example. It runs perpendicular to Federal Road, all right, and I can't get to the back. I can only use ground ladders. So if we have people hanging out the back, which is a very high probability of happening, if there's, you know, an issue in the public hallway and they have to get out, we have to throw ground ladders. That's manpower intensive, and it's labor intensive, and it takes time. You know, if you're really, you know, taking a beating with smoke, those are all concerns of mine. The things that I watch these buildings go up, and it keeps me up at night because I know there's you know, potentially going to be a problem. Lucky I have a good department, and we have great support from the town, but you know, when is enough, I guess, is my question.
I have a question. Can you just go over the numbers, the amount of calls you had in total, multifamilies and everything?
We went over 705 calls between Jan.
It's on the back.
It's on the
If you
back
flip to
side.
the back.
Flip it. It should give you your 705 calls in 18-month period between January 1st, 2023 to July 1st, 2024. 18 months. We went 705 times. They're listed out by address on there. Some are condos, a lot of them are the apartment buildings. All right, and they're all over town. We go to Oak Meadows, we go to Stillwater Circle, you'll see, you know, repeated addresses that we go to. You know, and it's driven by, you know, anytime you put a lot of people together somewhere, it's gonna affect the fire department and the ambulance, and we've seen it
That
happen.
does not include the mutual aid called out of.
No, that is just here, those are Brookfield.
And it does not include the 2 nursing homes.
Yeah, and it does not include the 2 nursing home, which is probably another 300 or 400 or 500 calls, just between the 2 nursing homes, especially for the ambulance.
What is a good intent call?
Someone think they might have saw a fire, and we go there, and it could be a candle in a window, or it was a good intent that it wasn't a malicious call. We also have what we call a malicious call. It's a coded call in the National Fire reporting system that we have.
Any malicious calls?
Some, you know, how many people come and just pull the fire alarm, the red handle. I mean, and it happens.
Happens in Congress.
Yeah, it happens in Congress. Yes, it does.
Yes.
But that happens frequently, so we call that a malicious false alarm. Or you might see a system malfunction. If the fire alarm's malfunctioning, it's all coded and it's right in there, and it breaks it right down. But we definitely support you guys on this, and if we can be of any help.
Okay, thank
You
you.
guys got anything?
Appreciate it.
No? Good? Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Cool, thank you.
Shannon Young?
My name is Shannon Young. I'm a resident of Bridgewater, but represent myself from our business address in Danbury. I would like to first of all thank Andy and all of our emergency service providers. Their ongoing efforts are extremely important to our community, and the amount of work that they do often does not get seen until the moment that you need it. So thank you guys very much. I'm the president of Silvermine Development. We've been working in Brookfield for all of my adult life. Our primary development is on the other side of Silvermine Road from here, and our family is heavily invested in Brookfield. We have many commercial properties and are one of the largest developers in town. We've created large rateable buildings that generate tremendous tax revenue and consume very little town resources. Additionally, we have been supportive of the community in many ways, such as support of the senior center, use of our vacant space when they were building their new facility, properties for numerous graduating classes, use of vacant spaces for their end of the year parties, construction, and for a number of times for police training on multiple addresses for their all different kinds of live fire training and for all different things with our canines, and we've been very helpful to them. Silvermine Development is very strong support of the moratorium. The town needs to pace growth with the resources available to support that growth. The residential developments consume a lot of resources and generate little revenue relative to that demand. We need to grow together. Developers, such as ourselves and others, need to provide places for people to work and opportunities for commerce in direct proportion to residential growth. The people appointed to secure our future as a town have failed in their duty, in part. Some say that this has happened, but this is not something that happened to us. It's something that they have actually created. And I'm speaking to the sewer capacity issue directly in that comment. So please pass this moratorium and promote commercial development, lowering the tax burden and burden on town resources. We cannot have one at the expense of the other. We urge the immediate affirmation of the moratorium. Thank you.
Thank you. Cynthia Meyer, or did she go? I don't see her.
Well, yeah, some of them came from they just couldn't last. So
I know.
They
That's my bedtime.
They'll have another chance.
Cynthia Juggler.
Same.
Okay. And next meeting, John Lepler? Same? Okay. Okay, any more who like to speak in favor of the moratorium? That is not on the list. No? All right, seeing none, and don't worry, the meeting will be continued till the next meeting. Those opposed, well, Nelson, you have your name down here. Are you opposed to the?
No, I was neutral.
Oh, neutral, okay.
No neutral. See,
suggesting is probably a good
You
idea.
just wanted to give information, so you had a chance for that. And then, I can't read this. Here, help me with that. It begins with an M?
I'm assuming it's Mitch.
Mitch and a P?
I have no idea what, it
Mitch
looks like an
Wall?
L.
Oh. Oh.
He's there.
Oh.
No,
So, not knowing what this is there anybody else like to speak in opposition? Yes.
No, not in opposition.
Oh, in four, okay.
I have a question for you, though.
Sure.
I mean, we've heard from experts, how did all these...
Oh, yeah, could you come up to the podium, state your name? So you have kind of a question of clarification.
I do.
So you're out of order, but I'll allow it.
Thank you. My name is Glenn Fredericks, 16 Shamrock Drive, Brookfield. Lived here for 30 years, something like that. We've heard from all these experts, and the police weren't here yet. How did these units were able to go forward, knowing that what we've heard from, these people that, the burden that got on the, it's going to be education, the police, the fire, and stuff like that. Didn't you guys solicit their expertise before you approved it?
Well, these are in retrospect. So back 10 years ago, when the plan of conservation development was developed, from there, back in 2016, some regulations were generated, and the current regulations that are in place now for the TCD, which is the Town Center District, and all the other zoning in town. And so then, based on that, which is someone's vision for the future, what we hope to be, people could build, developers could build, as long as they met the regulations. And so what you see in town meets those regulations, with some examples that aren't. There might be variances they've gotten, but generally, if it meets the regulations, we have to approve, because those are our regulations. At this point, now stuff is built. Before, say, when we did the rewrite in 2018, nothing was really built. We had no experience on, did the regulations work or not. Now we know, based on people coming to see what's happened, and now we have to review. So we want the moratorium to give us a pause so nothing can be built. Meanwhile, serendipity, the POCD is being redone. It had to be redone every 10 years by state law. So it's a good opportunity for the Planning Commission, who's in charge of that guiding document, to gather all the information from these experts and to look at what the town wants. They get the town input from all the people in town through surveys and public hearings, different types of meetings, workshops. They get input from all the different town people like us, the commissions, the departments and everything. And so they work on that, and we'll work on it with them to come up with this new plan of conservation development. And we thought it's a good time to put this pause in place so that we can stop and, stop the rise in EMS and everything else, the things we're concerned about.
But did you guys ever go to other towns that may have experienced it before to see what, what they say, what their input was, that, hey, our social services, our fire, our police and stuff like that? Or is it just like you?
I guess 10 years ago, they tried to predict what that would be.
It's not the same committee, it's different people sitting up here.
Yeah.
Can I-
Oh,
can I-
and,
can I add to that?
every 2 years, there's a new
Yeah, I know that you guys are.
Can I add to that?
Sure.
One of the things that comes in with any zoning application is the impact on health and safety. And we try to get as much as we can, but the only input we can take is that which comes forward. That's why the Commission went out of its way to get public input on this application.
Yeah.
And we'll continue to get public input on the application. One of the things that I'd like to add, is Chief Ellis mentioned it, and I believe Greg mentioned it as well, is the Laurel Hill development that, I guess it's almost 10 years old now itself.
Something like that, yeah.
When it was approved by the zoning commission, it had a, same footprints of the buildings, but it had a very small limited number. I believe it was 26% of the units were affordable, the rest were to be market rate. And then after it was approved, the developer applied for federal financing from the Department of Housing and Urban Development, and when it did, it made all the units affordable, despite the fact that it was approved here at, with a very small number. And you can't fight the federal government. So we were sort of sandbagged on that. We did everything we could locally, but it wound up with the same 3 buildings, but with a lot more units than this commission had approved.
Well, I'm not sure if everybody else wanted to ask this, but I would. The ones that are approved but not yet built, knowing what you know now, okay, that, you know, we may not be able to afford it, you know, or fire department can't get up on stuff, can you stop any of those?
No, very simply, at any given point in time, whether it involves multifamily housing or not, if an application meets the zoning regulations that are in place at the time, it's going to be approved. If an application does not meet the zoning regs, it's denied. And one thing a zoning commission or P and Z commission, which will become, can't do is spot zoning.
Yeah.
But
And it
didn't
takes
we-
years.
We did stop,
We did stop 68.
He's talking about the ones that are already approved.
Wasn't there one that was too high for you guys to get up?
And we
Right.
gotta stop with
Correct.
zoning and us, we went to Hartford. It was health and public safety was the only reason it could stop it, and they had the sewer for it. So we ended up using the fire department, and it was denied based on that.
But his questions are about the ones that are already
Yeah.
approved.
But didn't that development, didn't they pull out at Station Road? Was it Station?
Oh, Station
Oh,
Road,
that's
no,
different.
that's still up in the air, but.
Oh, I thought they pulled
But
out.
the time between when it gets approved and sometimes when they actually put a shovel in the ground could be years.
No, I understand.
Yeah, and so we might approve something and it's not bad, but then years later, all of a sudden, it starts up. Meanwhile, in the intervening time, a couple other ones got approved. So this is like, you know, a perfect storm of some that have very short timelines. You know, approved, we're gonna put a shovel in the ground within months. And ones that, oh, now we finally got the financing, and it was 6 years, but now we're ready to go. And all of a sudden, it hits all at the same time.
And you guys can't do anything about
Yeah,
it. so.
can't do anything about it, except what we're trying to, you know, stop.
I
anything
think almost
future.
every member of this commission, Glenn, if we could go back and change something that's here now, we probably would. I know I
Right.
would.
Thank you.
All right, do you have a,
I have a question.
You have to come to the microphone.
Yeah.
How did those?
oh, you have to come up and state your name and address.
That's my best.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank
A
you.
well-rested fireman is an asset to the community. So
Actually,
got it.
it's for them though. I'd like.
Andy, she's got a question for you.
I do have a, Kathy
You're not done yet. But you have to ask it through me.
Sure.
Your name
16
and address?
Kathy Fredericks, 16 Shamrock in Brookfield.
Okay.
I just want to know, how did those apartments or homes that were built across from the bowling alley, how did they get to be so tall? I mean, how?
Well, there's
it's like,
two things.
That was a court decision, I believe?
Yes.
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 We tried to fight that, that was done in court.
I passed by the other day and I couldn't believe. I was like, how many stories is that?
And
How?
it was what, 2018 when that was first came in front of the commission?
Yeah, so there's a 3-story building in the front, 4-story in the back, 100 units, and it was a settlement, a court settlement.
Yeah, we had to eat that, yeah,
And there's a couple of them like that,
it,
court settlement.
yeah, they worked with us, we do have access around back for our smaller aerial truck. I don't have ground ladders that can go that high. So they just don't, you know, so.
That's crazy. That's just crazy.
We all did our best to make the best of a bad situation that we had to, you know, absorb because of court.
And if it had gone to a judge, Superior Court, it might have been even worse.
Yeah, it could have gone 6 stories, it could have been, you know, so. Does that help you?
Sad.
Yes,
Just
it is.
sad.
So we have to
Thank
deal
you.
with a
Thank you.
lot of
Thank you,
different
Andy.
aspects of courts and state and regulations, our own regulations.
Because I came here to say about the quaintness of the town, and now it's not even the quaintness. It's just safety. It's so much more than that. Sewers.
Yeah.
We're going to build ourselves right out. And I'm fighting to stay in Brookfield. My husband wants to move, and you're making it really hard for me to want to stay. This is crazy.
16 Shamrock Drive will be.
On the market. Hey, I'm telling you, it's
Got a nice
sad.
pool in the back.
It's like no more, you know?
Is there anybody else who would like to speak
Do I-
in opposition? Oh, you don't want to speak in opposition, obviously.
No. I'd like to go around get signatures for you or something. It's just crazy.
Well, I would urge everybody to, you know, fill out that survey the planning commission's got, because they're trying to do their vision for the next 10 years of Brookfield. That's what the plan of conservation development is. It's the vision of Brookfield. And so they're basing it on feedback from the town people. They got 1,000, back in 2014, they had 1,000 respondents, and they based their plans and studies on that, and then the subsequent, the regs, the zoning regs. So this is happening again, so it's a perfect time to put your 2 cents in. So on the website, under the planning page, there's a.
You
link.
represent that in 2014, when that plan went out for survey, that what we have right now was what the town wanted?
It was, I think there's a little difference between what happened versus what the town wanted. If you look at the Halliday plan versus what happened, you know, how the regs came out. So then that was the back and forth between the planning and zoning at that point.
Because we were kind of promised like this little New England, you know, town with diagonal parking and, you know.
Yeah, the other problem with that area, you know, to talk about this plan is, we're not in charge of federal road. That's a state road. So we might want diagonal parking, but the state decides how it's gonna happen.
And you're also faced with, as you've heard Kurt say, we've heard Greg say, we've heard me say, if you go down Federal Road, if you turned right out of Silver Mine Road and went all the way to New Milford, up and down Federal Road, you've got a hopscotch of pre-existing non-conforming properties that you have to work around.
Yeah.
With whatever you do down there. And then you also have, again, I hope that if we got 1,000 responses in 2014, I hope we get 4,000 or 5,000 now, and.
So we're trying to advertise.
In 2015, they wanted 1,200 more units.
Yeah, the plan, well,
plan.
I would urge everybody too, also to look at, it's on the website too, the Halliday plan. That was what was the revitalization plan? That's the plan that was back in 2014. To see what was the vision back then? So you can see, well,
1,200
does it match what we have?
When did the
Yeah, that's
830G
the
moratorium come into effect?
The first one 6 years ago.
So any other, this meeting will continue, so if anybody like to speak?
One question.
Sure.
My name is Serge Kapitka, 10 Hillside Court, Brookfield. My question, I heard people may...
I'm sorry, can you please spell your name and give me your address?
Serge Kapitka, S-E-R-G-E, last name K-A-P-Y-T-K-A, 10 Hillside Court, Brookfield. So somebody mentioned about safety, and I was just curious if there is any statistics about crime rates going up with those new units that were built already, and maybe like project.
You know, that's good. We'll query the police on that.
Does your report cover that, Craig?
Yeah, those that will be built, because we are talking about, I hear people talk about sewer, you know, they can calculate how much, you know, it will be overwhelmed, like 90%. What about safety? What about crime rates also?
Yeah.
How they will go up?
We'll reach out to the police to get some data from that. Anybody else like to speak in opposition, or it's probably getting pretty late, so.
Motion to continue public hearing to next regular meeting,
Thank you,
September
Matt. Do I have a
12th.
second?
I'll second.
Thank you.
There-
Gwen? Any discussion? All in favor of continuing public hearing?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Oh, yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah, we did.
Fran needs us to act on one thing on that
Oh, yes.
enforcement report. Fran,
Yeah, which one was
you
it?
need, which one do you need us to act on the enforcement report?
Cease and
Oh.
desist.
Yeah, we have two more applications before we do that.
Patiently.
Can we do 128 Federal Road first? Yeah, okay. 8B, 128 Federal Road, Z-24-49. Oh, that was Mikkel. I knew you reckoned. You wanted to be here.
You were gonna sleep over, right?
Yeah, it's all right.
Did they kick us out at any point?
If we were late, we could say that.
If you go outside, you can't get back in, the doors are locked.
Oh, that's right. That's what happened last time, remember?
Yes.
I think it was,
You don't have sewage going to Dam Road.
Shall I get it up on the thing?
I'll be quick, I promise.
Mine all have my name on it, I think.
Ready?
Yes.
Michelle Morris McCauley with Artel Engineering Group, 304 Federal Road, Brookfield. Before you is 128 Federal Road.
We received zoning commission approval for special exception design review in October 18th, 2022. This is the site that's currently under construction in front of BJ's at the intersection with Federal Road, across from Savers and Harbor Freight. The original approval that we got was for 3 units in the building. We had unit 1, 2, and 3. Unit 1 is where Starbucks is, which was approved for fast food. And units 2 and 3 were for general retail. We came back and did a site plan modification through administratively, and that was approved on March 24th, 2023, where we combined unit 2 and 3 to just make unit 2, so we have 2 total units, and combined it into general retail. So I'm here tonight because we are proposing to change the use for unit 2 to a fast food restaurant. I did the calculations. We based on the drive-through fast food for unit 1 being Starbucks and the fast food unit 2, we would need 40 parking spaces, and we have a total of 44, so we meet the demands of the parking. We've been before WPCA already. We have our sewer approval for both units, so we're just here for the change of use.
Are they gonna serve chicken there? That's
Dave's
what I
Hot
heard.
Chicken is is what they're looking to put in there. So it's different operating times.
Oh, I just.
No, it's all right. It's fine. No, it's they're.
I was hoping for a chicken joint.
They're. Yes, yes. They're looking at Dave's Hot Chicken as the proposed tenant for that unit.
Any questions from the?
Yeah, I've got a question for you. So I know the Starbucks is gonna have a drive-through. Is Dave's gonna have a drive-through?
No,
Okay.
no drive-through.
All right.
The only plan changes that I made to the plan, other than making it a fast food, is I added a little patio in the rear of the building so they can have some outdoor seating, and it's kind of right where the board menus are by the drive-through.
Okay.
But no, they will not have a drive-through. The drive-through is solely dedicated to Starbucks.
Okay. And,
We-
oh, go ahead.
We could use a nice restaurant.
I will let the owners know.
Really, a good.
I know that they wanted.
Not our
the-
purview.
They wanted the Dave's Hot Chicken, and then due to the sewer moratorium, it was put on ice. Since they lifted the moratorium, they're back now with the Dave's Hot Chicken, so,
Yes, and we've seen once the moratorium was lifted.
yeah.
Okay. Any other questions from the commission?
So out of curiosity and looking at the layout,
Mhm.
and I kind of know how the lot is, the drive-through is gonna be on
The rear of the building.
okay, so.
So Federal Road is kind of, is at the bottom of the
That's-
page.
Okay, so that's what I was looking for.
Yeah.
So,
So
pulling
see-
into the lot is gonna be basically parallel to where the B of A is. You'll pull in there?
You
Or
can.
are they gonna
So,
be,
so there's, it's hard to see on this plan, but on the bottom right hand of the page, so if you're coming southbound on Federal Road, you can enter the site there where Fran is pointing. And then you can go to the drive-through, and then there is an exit on the left side of the page, which is the access into BJ's. So
And
if
the
you
light.
wanna go northbound, you go out that exit, exit. If you want to go southbound, you can use the north entrance to actually go southbound as
okay,
well.
so there is, all right, so then they are gonna cut it on Federal Road as well?
Yep, and we
Okay.
have our DOT encroachment permit. I actually just met with the DOT the other day.
Okay, that's fine.
Um,
And that's what I wasn't sure, because I know the property next to it, there's definitely a demarcation between the two properties. That's why, and I know they've got one cut for them, which is why I was asking.
The original property owners is the ones that own the property that BJ's is on. So when we got the approvals, it was all owned by the same property owner. It has now been sold to Summit Development, who is the applicant now.
Okay.
And that's a
So
right
you can
in,
go
right
in
out.
and out
Yeah,
on
yeah,
that
yeah.
entrance?
Yeah,
On
so
the
you
right?
can go in from Federal Road going south, and you can exit going south on that entrance. If you want to go north, you have to go out
Okay.
the other
Yeah.
side of
It's
the property.
restricted.
It's
restricted.
one of
Yeah, I
those
got it.
triangles.
I
Yeah.
thought,
And working with the DOT, they made me have it very, very defined to make so you can only go south to get
So
out of
there's
there.
gonna be curbs there, unlike the one by Costco where people drive over?
There are.
Sorry.
Yes.
Blow out
Doesn't
your
Dairy-
tires if you
No,
do it
that's what I'm
wrong.
asking.
Doesn't Dairy Queen operate that way too?
Yes.
Yeah.
But see, I had to kind of make a little bit of a lip. It's a little hard to see with all my things, but a little lip to try to discourage people from making a left to go north.
Done, that's fine.
All right, any other questions? Take a motion to approve 128. Anyone who wants to make that motion. And just mention, per sheet 3, Rev 18, dated July 29, 24. And sheet 4.
I'm just gonna
Rev-
reference, it's almost 11 o'clock, I'm
As per,
referencing you,
yeah.
as per what you just said.
You want me to do it?
Sheet 4, Rev 19, dated. 3 Rev 18, dated July 29, 2024. And sheet 4, Rev 19, dated July 29, 2024.
I move to approve 128 Federal Road Z 24-49, Artel Engineering, 304 Federal Road, Suite 308, Brookfield for Brookfield, 55 Station South, Southport, Connecticut site plan modification application for proposed usage change of commercial unit from retail to restaurant.
I second it.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
That was unanimous. All right,
Thank you very much.
81 Pocono Road, Z-24-50. Sorry for the wait. You're the last two.
No worries.
Jeez.
You've had so many other meetings you've been to, so we only get to see you once, probably.
I hope so.
Get to see wetlands multiple times, ZBA.
So you know the site?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
I've been watching it come.
Uh-oh. My name is Dan Guerra. I'm the applicant for 81 Pocono Road. My address is 52 Rita Drive, New Fairfield.
Yeah, pretty good.
With me, I have, oh, sure, I'm sorry, G-E-R-A. I have my civil engineer with me, Brian Baker with Civil One. If needed, although I think I'll try to do this as best I can. So this is my first time doing this. You kind of let me know, do I just walk you through the proposal, through the site?
Why don't you walk us through the proposal, what you want to do?
Sure.
The variances you had to get, the wetlands, your approvals you've gotten so far.
All right, so I know it's getting late, so I will take my sweet time and keep you guys, no, I'll be quick.
Order us dinner.
Okay, so 81 Pocono Road, we're on Pocono Road, so this is directly across from the firehouse. It's a 4.9 acre parcel, it's vacant currently, I think there was a house on it at one point, and that's been demolished. It's an I-1 HO zone. We are proposing a self-storage facility, and that is a permitted use for I-1 zones. What we're proposing, if you wanna, looks a little blurry there, but.
Yeah, to clear up.
Okay. So what we're proposing are 3 separate storage buildings. They're bi-level, and what that means is, take a look at this rendering right here. So we're basically utilizing the grade of the site, and so they will be drive up for each level. So there's no stairs, no elevators. That's what's called bi-level. Approximately 43,000 square foot gross, and because they're bi-level, the footprint is about 21,500 square feet. Real kind of rough layout of the site. So this is Pocono Road running north-south. So the parcel is on the east side of Pocono Road, and on the south side of the site, we have an entrance. You'll drive through the entrance, and there's a 25 by 30 proposed office building. And I will, oh, you guys, it's clear for you guys.
Yeah, yeah.
So there'll be a gate between one of the storage buildings and the office building. The tenants will drive through the gate and essentially go down a ramp, and now they're at the back of the building here. You see the back of the building there. So there'll be storage units on both floors, obviously. The tenant will then drive all the way around the back of the building and up a ramp to the front of the site, and they will exit near where they came in, so there'll be a separate entrance and exit, and they'll go through a gate to get in and a gate to exit the site. We did, it's a tough site, so we have an Iroquois gas easement running through the site, we have wetlands on the site, and significant topography. We have like a 30-foot grade change from the north side of the site going towards the wetlands. So we did receive a variance to the front yard or front setback from 50 feet to 41 feet. And one of the requirements of that variance was additional evergreen trees, landscape buffer between the road and the development.
What's the distance from the railroad?
Sorry?
What's the distance from the railroad?
From the railroad to the buildings? A couple hundred feet. Yeah. Yeah. So the, I mean, the buildings are 50 foot wide. You can kind of see the, you know, so.
Looks different on there than it looks on here. That's all.
Okay. Okay. So in terms of, I guess the architectural concept here, we understand this is Brookfield, we understand this is New England, and so the goal has always been to achieve you know, something that harmonizes with the neighborhood architecturally. So we're opposite of a metal storage building is kind of the concept that we've been going for. So we didn't get these renderings in time. I think you guys got one rendering, but I have some additional renderings here, so you can kind of get a concept of the office building. We're utilizing a brick skirting around the front of all of the storage buildings and the office building. We're using it's not in the rendering, but a wrought iron fence with brick pillars between Pocono Road and the site, so rather than like a chain link fence. So the objective is to have the look and feel of a retail establishment, not a industrial storage facility, although that's the zone, you know, that this is in. Any specific questions?
What is the upper part of the building constructed out of?
So the construction of these buildings is they're concrete foundation with full stem walls that go down to the frost line. And then the back side of the building here is galvanized steel studs with galvanized metal panels, painted panels. And the same thing goes for the front above the brick skirting. So it's a metal panel.
It's metal?
Metal panel, yep.
And the facade, above the windows?
Yeah, that'll be a painted metal panel.
Metal.
Yep. So in addition to that, I guess a good point, we're proposing a parapet wall, which is just a wall that extends past the roof line. And the purpose of that is to mask essentially the ugly metal roof that these storage facilities typically have. So if you're on Pocono Road, you're not able to see the silver metal roof from the street. So again, the goal has been to make this look and feel as much of a retail establishment as possible, not a metal storage building.
There's like a standing seam roof, is that what you have on
there? Yeah, yep, standing seam roof.
And so from the front, it'll just look like a one-story building.
That's correct, yep. So it's, I believe I want to say 13 feet high in the front. We submitted elevations, I don't remember what that is off the top of my head.
Right.
About 13 feet from the front measured. And in the zone, I think we can go 35 feet.
Yeah,
so
you're in yeah.
We're in
13 from the ground to the roof?
Yep, because it's essentially a single story from the road.
It's a walkout basement.
Oh.
Yeah. Right, walkout basement, exactly.
So the
You
front
did say you were
elevation's
gonna
at
plant
13.6, deck elevation.
evergreens in front of the building to kind of mask the building.
That's
from
correct, yep,
poking
and
out?
so that's that's the landscape plan there. So there's a significant landscape plan prior to the zoning variance that was granted. So in addition to that landscaping, which meets all of our regulations for zoning, we're proposing an additional 24 evergreen trees as additional screening because the ZBA essentially allowed us to push the buildings closer to the road.
Yeah.
So as a compromise, we're adding additional screening.
And that's because the wetlands asked you to push it away from the wetlands?
That is correct. So you can kind of see in the center building, storage building, the building actually jogs, so it's not as
Oh, I see.
wide as the other buildings. And that's where we have in this red dashed line with the dots, that represents the wetlands. So we've designed a retaining wall that goes around the wetlands and pushes us back. But that's what that variance was for the wetlands.
Yeah, for the record, Brian Baker with Civil One. So it was not only, there was a variance to both, not only we get the variance to push the building forward, but you see that middle building is narrower. Originally, that was the same depth as the other building, so we lost some square footage on that building. So yeah, the first wetlands meeting, what we were proposing, I believe it was under 100 square feet of wetlands, direct wetlands impact. And they asked if there was any way for us to avoid it. That drove the withdrawal of that application, the application to ZBA for the variance, then go back to wetlands. And they were very happy with the change. Obviously, in addition to what we've all talked about, there's a full drainage system that's being installed to infiltrate the water quality volume, detain all the storm drainage through a 100-year storm. So that was vetted out, thoroughly by your wetlands commission, and they granted, obviously, their approval.
Yeah.
Prior to us coming here.
All right. Actually, I think across from the firehouse, which is brick, right? Which will probably look nice. It echoes the brick.
Yeah, so you have this building, you have the firehouse, you have the post office, are all brick. So the objective was for this to fit in with the neighborhood and certainly not stand out and frankly, I think enhance the street from what it currently is.
Yeah.
And obviously to follow up on what we were discussing
it's not
ad nauseam
multifamily
tonight.
It's not multifamily.
And it hardly uses any sewer.
Yeah.
In fact, there's probably
Is
one
it
bathroom.
too late to change it to multifamily?
Yes.
Out of curiosity, are you guys, I mean, I'm assuming you're not, because these are storage, but these aren't temperature controlled, this is gonna literally be.
No, they are.
Oh, they're gonna be
So,
temperature
yep,
controlled?
so how it's set up is all of the, what we call the drive-up units, which are the ones with an overhead door.
Yeah.
Those are non-climate controlled, but this is a 50-foot wide building, so those are gonna be 20 or 25 or 30 foot deep. The units behind there will be accessible through a hallway.
Okay.
And the interior units are climate controlled. The breakdown is about 70% climate control, 30% non-climate control.
And the mechanicals will be on the roof too?
The mechanicals will be, that's a great question. Typically, they're likely gonna be in these landscape islands, I don't know if we have it in the rendering, between the buildings. So that's where like your condenser will be.
Right.
Probably because they're interior units.
In the middle unit, because I'm looking at the render, or the
floor plan.
The floor plans.
Yep.
So, again, the straightforward ones, the 10 by 22s, they've got the doors. So that second unit, you've cut down, at least I'm assuming that's the lower one, because these are 10 by 13, and that's the 45, but these are both saying that they're 45, which is throwing me off.
There's a third one then. Maybe another page?
No.
Claris didn't get all of the floor plans completed in time for the submission. I think
That's
they were
fine.
showing this as an example.
That's fine, and like I said, that's why I was asking the question.
Sure.
Because I just assumed, again, though they're saying that they're both 45 foot.
Yep.
From top to bottom, 22 by 10 and 22 by 13. I see that as a difference based on what you were talking about.
Right, it's just the thickness of the walls. That's why you're seeing a difference in them.
But you're losing almost 8 feet. 10 by 13 and 10 by 22.
I'll be honest, I wouldn't go off the unit size.
That's fine, okay. All right, so.
But essentially what you're looking at is these are drive-up units.
Right.
On one level, then you're gonna go into a hallway and access all of these.
Correct.
And then on the other level, it's just a mirror image of that, which is
Okay.
the complete opposite.
All right, that's fine.
Are we gonna see
We
the
went off the air,
mechanicals?
folks, just so you know. We went off the air.
Oh.
We died?
Well,
We didn't mean to, but.
no, we didn't mean to. We got this.
Yeah.
So the mechanicals
You're
will
not
be
gonna
hidden
see
from
the
view.
You're not gonna see the mechanicals, no.
Okay.
How are they gonna be hidden?
You have all that landscaping along the road frontage and the wrought
4
iron
hours,
fence,
no,
and then
it's
landscaping
4 hour
within
limit
the
on it.
site.
And the only mechanical outside is just an air conditioning condenser like
We
you
had a
have at
5-minute
the
break.
house.
So there's landscaping within this site?
That's
Yeah.
correct.
Yeah, there's over,
It'll be
It'll be the most well-planted site around as far as.
you got
Well, that's-
20,
Well, there's a lot of
So
water
like when
near
you're
the
over on the
wetlands.
Price is Right, you know?
yeah.
yeah,
They
there's
don't see
23
it.
deciduous trees, 43 evergreens, and 111 shrubs and perennials throughout the interior island, so it's a really nice landscaping plan.
All right. Does anybody else have some questions about this application? No? I'll take a motion to approve as submitted. Anyone?
This is I'm trying to figure out, oh. Thank you.
Eight.
That's exactly, I'm looking for I'll make a
Where are
motion. I'll make a motion to approve 81 Pocono Road, Z-24-50, Sterling Property CT LLC, 52 Rita Drive, New Fairfield, site plan application for a new self-storage facility.
So, thank you, Tony. A second?
Second.
Thank you, Gwen. Any more discussion on the motion? No? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Make it, let the record show is unanimous. And, thank you. That's
Thank
it.
you. Appreciate your time.
Good luck to you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Good luck to you.
Yeah, working tomorrow.
You got the heavy lifting.
Fran has one action. we
Yeah,
need.
okay. Fran has
What's the
one,
one action we
Yes.
need?
action item for, what was it?
67 Obtuse Road.
Yes.
Oh, yes. Well, I'll let, Fran.
Yeah,
and-
the office received a complaint regarding the individual who owns the house renting out rooms. It was inspected by the building department, fire marshal had gone out there. I had sent a notice of violation recently and had done an inspection with land use director Barkowski. Upon entering the house, the individual, the owner of the house, who does not reside in the house, indicated that she's renting out 4 rooms upstairs. There's 3 bathrooms. There was individuals in the bedrooms with locks on the doors and stuff. Again, viewing the house, going to the lower level, there was a bedroom with a crib down there, and another bed. The house has 3 kitchens. Looking outside, I had noticed 2 gas grills, lots of signs saying, you know, if you're using it, please clean up, with numerous patio tables out there. The individual had indicated that she plans on moving into the house when she sells her house in Danbury, but as of right now, I think it's congregate housing. She's not residing in the property, it's being rented out. Each room is, I guess it has locks on it and stuff, so.
Motion to direct the CEO to issue a cease and desist for 67 Obtuse Road South effective August 9th, 2024.
Thank you, Matt.
I'll second.
Thank you, Tony. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
It was unanimous. All right, so, what do we have left to do?
Do want to make one comment
Yeah.
before we go. Courtney Knapp, who has put in 100 hours or more to the Plan of Conservation and Development, leaving Brookfield, she's moved to Newtown.
Yeah,
And
she's
we're going
out.
to miss her, but on behalf of this commission, I want to thank her for the effort she's put into this project.
Oh, yeah, well, thank you, Matt. I think that, I agree, because the letter she wrote out to all the different commissions and the interested stakeholders for this POCD that they're doing, she's a planning professional, that's what her job is.
She found her forever home apparently, but it's in
Yeah,
Newtown.
but it's not here. So she resigned from the planning commission. But she did a lot of work before she left to help start the POC.
Courtney
Courtney
Knapp.
Knapp. She was on the planning commission. So she was, I guess she was in charge of the
Yeah,
subcommittee,
yeah,
right?
well, yeah, Linda Taylor, I guess, is going to be replacing Courtney as far as that on the planning commission.
Oh, Fran, what is Annie McClellan doing? Ann?
Oh, she will be our new land use administrative assistant. She is taking over where Jacinia Cruz had her spot, so. Yeah, Jacinia resigned a couple weeks ago.
So now,
Just so you know, she catered a big event I did yesterday. She's a great cook.
I'm hoping she brings us some
Great cook.
Now I'll move to adjourn.
Yeah, and a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor of adjourning?
Aye.
Whoa, wow, it was two.